Welcome to the Condor DM show. Tonight is off script, and like casual nights, I sit down, right? And we just openly talk about things. No script. I got things planned though, things to talk about. We're not going to talk about things right away. I start a little early just to give people time to roll in, get comfortable before I dig into what I want to talk about, or I guess bring up. Tonight is about bringing stuff up and just letting you guys interact with me, right? Worst comes to worst, don't worry. These topics, I have a lot on the top of my head I could just say on them, but you know, it's a night is this night is mainly to interact with you. Like other nights are to cover games and then we interact. Tonight is just interaction with you guys. All about focusing on my people here, right? And I got some good stuff. I got some good stuff. Don't worry about it. I got a whole bunch of things written down. We'll see if we get through most of it. It's just about bringing stuff up. And once I bring it up, I can go, right? And then just getting you guys talking. I think it'll be interesting stuff. It's stuff I cover on the channel and whatnot. Usually that's going to be the aim. In some cases, it's random gaming stuff I just see around the internet being talked about, right? I try not to be too vague, bringing stuff up that is just not part of the bigger conversation right now. Oh, Craig. Always lovely to see Craig. I'm glad you're here. From Wales. Glad you're here, Craig. I'll mention a little bit more about Bushido a little later. I don't want to go too far into these things because I'm going to cover them. But like Bushido is all about feudal Japan. It's one of the rare older games that is a little bit more leaning towards action than others. A lot of other games, older games, are just action. Combat fighting is dangerous. And it's not like a back and forth thing like some of the newer games, right? Just the way it is. You know, you swear older games will tell you how dangerous combat is, and it's all about avoiding the combat. But really quickly, I'll say this. Most people, no matter how much they say they understand that, if you go back to the old school, a lot of people played the games like action was a major part of what they were doing. It's why I'm not as angry, say, with Wizards of the Coast when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons, because I actually think they catered to something they were seeing. You know, the game says avoid combat, especially early on at all costs. But what do you see most of the time? A lot of tables go into combat, right? Instead of avoiding it. And so why would you cater to something where the majority of people that you see gaming, from the game masters or DMs to players, are all playing more into the action than playing against it or avoiding it? So when you look at Wizards of the Coast, you might say, oh, they focus on these superhero characters, but they're focusing on characters that can handle the combat better, handle the action better, because action is what a lot of people want in the game. So that's all you're seeing there. So I don't hold it against them. I just don't like the amount of rules, say, they put into some of these newer games like WotC. They put so many rules into the combat. I don't like that because I find that's hand-holding. I don't mind more action. I just prefer less hand-holding of the players, you know, taking part in the action. But in reality, most people are not, say, super wise when it comes to these games and certain parts like action. Like if I don't tell you that you're in range or you're a range, like just say you're a character with a bow. How many players I know that would get too close to melee combat in older games? They're up close quarters. I'm like, dude, you're in range. You got to move back. Well, it's sad. A lot of people will get close up. They'll be playing a wizard that could have range options, too close up. And you'd think they learn after like one bad combat, but next thing you know, in the action, they be up close again. I'd be like, wow, okay, I gotta sort of, you hope players learn, but sadly, it could take them a while to learn. And a game that doesn't handhold you and tell you to get back in range properly, position yourself, what do you think you're going to get? You're going to get games, you know, modern day games where the game is telling you to position yourself in range. It's hand-holding you and walking you through it so you don't get caught up in close quarters combat with a character that might be more made for range than, say, close quarters. Sadly. It's what happens when you open up a hobby to more people than the hobby was made for. because they'll say certain games are a thinking player's game in the tabletop role playing game hobby, but really, old school is meant just to be a thinking person's game in general. So what happens when you open up to the wider audience? You find out there's not that many people out there that are super wise in their strategy or understanding of just about anything. Like if it's not that well spelled out for them, they make mistakes. When I go into my criticisms and defenses in a lot of the when I'm doing the games, you guys will hear, especially my wiser people here, will hear criticisms that make no sense to them. I just don't get it. Why wouldn't people have a talk beforehand? Why wouldn't they figure this out? The game masters could be as guilty as the players. You'd have the game masters that were new coming in, whereas I hate to say it, sometimes you feel like they're as thoughtless as the people they're running the game for. And I'll cover things where I'm telling you things about the game, and I have to sort of remind people sometimes that as much as what I'm explaining in reality in the actual text, what I'm telling you, even though it's true about it, and the designers accept what I'm saying is true, they even say it in the text, a lot of what I'm saying, the wisdom of what I'm saying about the game is not spelled out for you. It's assumed that you're a thinker. So it doesn't need to be spelled out for you, right? I did a video recently on this where I won't dive too far into it, but I'll just say I went into a community where it was all deep thinking people, wargaming people, military people, strategy people, really deep thinkers. And they would just get it. You go into a game, you wouldn't have to explain anything. And the text didn't need to give them wisdom to avoid something. It just made sense to avoid things. It made sense because they'd lose resources. What's the benefit of doing that? What's the risk compared to what they're going after? And they could use that type of thinking, risk versus reward, stuff like this. When I went from the military and sort of a thoughtful group of gamers into the more public area, civilians, I started meeting people that weren't thinking risk and reward. Like they didn't think that way at all. And I went from extremely being challenged as a game master over so many years to, wow, the things some players that I knew would walk through would totally floor, the wider audience, right? The wider group of players would floor them. It'd be like they wouldn't think of risk and reward. They'd just be like, oh, I got to fight them to get the reward. It'd be simple thinking. And simple thinking means they're not thinking in that way and they're not avoiding the things the game would hope that they avoid without spelling it out for them. It's almost like the old designers treated you like you were intelligent from the get-go. They have more respect for the people playing the game, so they wouldn't spell everything out for you, right? Just saying. And who can say where that thinking comes from? Well, a lot of people just don't spend their time in war games or in the military. So a lot of normal people actually do not consider these things on a daily basis. And that lack of consideration, you can feel it in the game when you put it in front of them. I did a video recently on puzzles. Let's see all the things I'm going to talk about tonight. I don't got no script. Just wrote some notes down here to keep me focused so we don't get off into other topics. The puzzle video I did, I want to talk about puzzles in some general sense. My take on, especially Dungeons and Dragons, but this could work for other games too, a human-focused game where you're not just playing humans, but still a human-focused game. And that's going to sound complicated right now. Like I'm not going to give any meat to that bone until I get to it. But what do I mean? A human-focused game, but say you're playing an elf, and what would I exactly mean by that? Are you saying play humans? No, but I have an approach to playing elves and dwarves in D&D that I don't see a lot of people doing, and I find it more beneficial. And it gets players that normally don't play those races to a certain degree that well. They'll play like humans with pointy ears. I get them closer to playing the elf or something in that vein of the dwarf, and I'll explain that when I get to it. I want to talk about role play with monsters more, in the game. I think that's really important. maintaining setting. I think that's important overall, especially for D&D, where a lot of DMs do not maintain it. And when I've experienced their games or I talk to them, they do talk about having a hard time maintaining something. Sandbox, we'll go a bit into that. And tropes. I want to talk about tropes. I've talked about it before, but sort of a different take on them. How you can use tropes in a way where it's just a unique way, where somebody probably won't even know that you're using the trope to begin with. I did a video recently on online gaming, and we'll talk a bit about that. And then we'll talk about being a good player. There's an aspect to being a good player that might surprise you, that I don't actually worry about certain other things. At the end of the day, I don't care how advanced your thinking is. Overall, just about anybody can be a good player under one circumstance, and we'll get to that. And now I want to talk about a pause I want to do on wargaming. And I'll go into that. The reason I'm thinking of just doing a little pause on the idea of covering war games right now. There's a reason for that. And then we'll go a bit into just talking about the games I'm going to cover coming up, because I tell you about them, but you might not know exactly about them. And I just want to give you a little rundown, like on space opera. I'm going to cover that Thursday. Tomorrow night, I'm going up for my birthday with friends that are down just for a few days. They won't be here the weekend on my actual birthday. That's why we're going out early. Tell you a bit about space opera and Bushido. And I mean, a lot of people know about Shadowrun, but just give a quick rundown on that. Not give away what I'm going to cover in the actual streams, but just to give you guys a sort of a small preview to get you hyped up for those streams, right? So why do I come in with all that plan? Because unlike other streams, I notice when people don't plan things out, next thing you know, they're talking about what they got for groceries or how the weather is, or they go off everywhere. And me, I do tabletop role-playing game streams. So I come into this wanting to talk about the games, the game aspects, things related to the game from start to finish. That's the aim here, right? So just having a few notes on what I want to talk about, but no script, just off the top of my head stuff, just to sort of keep it on track and give you guys something to respond to and little issues for you. When I get to them, you'll hear what I have to say, and we'll go from there. But I'm happy to see Craig around. And like normal, the people that come here to paint their miniature, sit back and not have to worry about chat. I've told you guys all from the get-go, nothing changes here. Each one of these topics I can talk about and entertain you. I promise you. You can sit back, don't have to worry about chatting, paint your mini, drink your drink, drink your coffee, drink your tea, have whatever, drink your rum. On my birthday, though, just to let you know, on Sunday, I'll be having a few drinks of rum. I'll try not to get too smashed faced on the stream or anything, because I'm going to be covering Shadowrun. I can definitely cover the game properly, even if I'm a little buzzed up. But I'm going to be drinking a little bit of rum on my birthday. Now, again, I'm going out with my friends tomorrow night because they won't be here for the weekend. So they want to take me out early for my birthday. So I'll be doing a birthday celebration early, privately tomorrow night. I'm not streaming. I won't be here for that reason. But come Sunday, I will be having a few drinks. And I thought about having some beer, but I'm like, nah, I want to have some rum. Usually I like the hard liquor, so it's usually either whiskey or rum. And I rarely ever drink, so my birthday is definitely an occasion when I do definitely give myself permission to have a few drinks, right? So I won't get too smashed on Sunday. We'll be good. But just want to see if people took something good away from the puzzle video, because it might seem very plain, but it's like I picked certain puzzles on purpose, right? And I don't want to just give you some basic puzzles to run off and do. I wanted to give you puzzles that cover a wide variety of way of looking at puzzles, different types, different methods, different problems. And basically, that set of puzzles should be able to help you build your own on top of, you can use them straight off of the video if you want to, or even adjust what I've put out there for the video in any way you wish, or just come up with your own. But I want you to understand puzzles, because a lot of people, I'll ask them about like a game master, and do you use puzzles in your game, in your dungeon? And they'll be like, not really. Like, unless they search for something online and just directly get it, they'll just not use it. I'll be like, do you make your own? No. And I'll be like, they seem really complicated, right? Yeah, they're not. puzzles are one of the easiest things to apply to a game. It doesn't matter where you apply to dungeon and D&D or any game. So it's good to know about these things because they're just, think about the whole game in a way as a puzzle in itself, right? But these are direct little puzzles that teach you about what's the purpose of the puzzle. It's not just that it's a neat thing. It is, they are neat, but what's the purpose? What is the purpose to a puzzle? Okay. Let me light this up and we'll dig into the purpose of a puzzle. Well, if you know the gameplay loop in Dungeons and Dragons, you know about wandering monsters in the dungeon's a big thing. So if you understand that resources from the get-go in the dungeon is a big issue, one of your main resources is your health. Oh, Craig, never worry. Never worry. If you're here, what I'm going to cover now, we'll take care of most of it. But I appreciate it when you get time. Hey, if you can dig into some, and it definitely goes, in detail over the stuff, right? I'd appreciate that. That's good for watch time and all that. So I appreciate if you get the time when you can. But you never worry about that. Ever worry about that. I mean, never. I'm here to serve you. It's not the other way around, right? So as long as you're satisfied, even with coming to the stream tonight, I'm satisfied because it means I'm serving you. And that's good. So don't worry about that type of stuff. I want you to think about the Dungeons and Dragons loop, but it doesn't have to just be that loop because this should be very similar in a lot of games. When you pause or take too long, there should always be pressures around something. Again, you go back to the Traveler thing of pressures in the game. So pressures aren't just in a dungeon. They should be everywhere. That's a main thing. Little pressures to get you moving. It's how you can avoid doing plots when you open up a sandbox and just let you make a world, you have the world there, but you don't have an underlying plot or even a connected line of plots for the game. You have nothing prepared like that. You just go in, you have minor pressures like you owe money, you got to get this done, you got to get this filled, and then you let players decide how they want to do that. It's not about guiding them on like a railroad. It's about just putting minor pressures in there. Like you owe money, you decide how you want to go about dealing with paying that off. But it's a small pressure. There's no plot. From their actions, plots should get built. You should be able to see them and build them from there. But pressures will exist if you do it properly as a game master in almost every game in every situation. Is the idea is you don't want just players stalling the game and standing around in any game of tabletop role-playing games. This is true, right? You always want to have a reason why players with their characters should be doing something, right? That's part of being active in the game. If they're not initiating the activity, there should be a pressure somewhere for them to do it, not just in a dungeon. But in the dungeon loop, for example, with D&D, what would be a puzzle? A puzzle it's a delay feature, and it's meant to challenge you. It's getting you to figure out the puzzle, but the puzzles are simple. I don't need to tell you puzzles are okay with being simple. You don't have to have this extravagant puzzle going in. It can be very simple. Like I put one example in there of having levers on the wall. And there could be a locked door in the room on the other side. You enter the room and you might even pull one lever, it's going to lock the other door. It's going to slam that door lock. So now you're completely locked in the room. One lever might actually get you unlock both doors, or at least unlock the door that's initially locked on the other side of the room that you want to get through. There's no pick to that door, for example. Maybe there's no lock, so you don't go up like a thief. Like you wouldn't be able to get through it that way. So it's locked another way. You got to get the lever down, the right one, but there might be 10. And it's a guessing game. It is a complete guessing game, which lever. There's no exact, you don't need to put a hint in there. You don't need to be that. That's not your job as a game master. It's okay to be very random with say a puzzle like this. You got 10 levers on the wall. They got to pull the right one. I'm guessing, because it's okay for it to be a guessing game with a puzzle. It can be that simple. The others could be traps, though. One could just seal you in, sort of like a trap. So traps will be mixed in. Minor traps, bad traps, aggressive traps. Could be when you pull one lever, it could kill you. You pull another lever, it could zap you. But you could even pull those traps off, and then you hit one lever that's a reset, which puts all the other levers up, meaning all the traps you just went through are reset. They can do the same thing to the next person. So one character's dead. Now you got another character trying to pull them, and he's pulled the reset. They're all gone back up, right? And even at that point, the reset could also reset which lever is going to open the door. So Now you think, regardless of the reset, we had 5 down there. We should be closer to the right one. Maybe not now. It's been switched up. It's a guessing game like that. It really is. And that's why puzzles are good for even experienced players. Like, well, with an experienced player, he's ran into this already. Won't matter. It's all random and guessing. So even experienced players usually are stuck in a zone where there's still a bit of randomness. So like there's one or one puzzle I open up with where it's no. But one puzzle I talked about at the start of the video, I'll bring up for you guys here, is where it's the 3 statues. You come up to 2 doors. 3 statues could talk to you, and one might even offer to say you can ask one of us, which is the right door, and that one might even tell you. One of us lies, one of us is random, one of us will tell you the truth, right? And there's 2 doors. One's going to lead to your death. One's going to be the right door for you to get where you're going. And you can ask the statues which one, or you can just pick the door and go and take your chances on a random pick, right? Now, there is ways an experienced player might understand right away to say, okay, if I pick the truth teller, or if I get like because you don't know which one you're going to pick, yes? Or so tell me what one of the other statues would tell me is the wrong door, right? And it's basically whatever door they're going to say is the wrong door, you pick the opposite, right? But the truth, how can I say it? The truth teller would tell you right away. The liar will tell you which door is the right door. He'll say which door is the wrong door. You'll be lied to. If you ask the lying one to ask which ones, well, even if the truth teller would tell you the truth, the lying statue will just lie to you anyway. So you still pick the opposite of whatever you're told. What you have to be worried about is not running into the random one, because the random statue out of the 3 will give you a random answer no matter what. And then you can't for sure just pick the opposite and be safe. Puzzles are that way. They're meant to be loose and not a guaranteed answer in any case. So an experienced player, no matter how many times they run into a puzzle, could still get their character killed. But that's what makes them very challenging. Now, the other thing a puzzle does is it eats up time, right? So with pressures on you, with things going on, well, how much time is it going to eat up? In a dungeon for D&D, it'd be the wandering monster. You don't want to have, give more time than you need to for a wandering monster to appear around the scene, right? So if you take too long trying to figure out what a puzzle is, well, you could get out on the other side of the door and there's monsters waiting for you. A wandering monster group has approached that area and you're going to have an encounter even though you've gotten through the place. So it's time delay. There are minor traps, but the minor traps don't just mean minor. They could kill you, but they'll be straightforward. They don't have to be super complicated traps within a puzzle. A puzzle doesn't always have to even be traps that will kill you. They could just be the time delay, and that's, again, for the wandering monster, which could kill you if you encounter the wandering monster because you take too long, right? So puzzles are simple. It's like and you don't have to give a lot of information usually for puzzles. It's like if you're past something that can lock around your wrist and you're told, well, there's a puzzle to it, like there's a way to get it off your wrist. The idea is for you to figure it out, not for somebody to give you a bunch of hints on a wall for you to figure it out, right? So puzzles are way more simple than you think, but they're not simple. They're meant to be random. And within the randomness, you can never guarantee what the answer is going to be, right? That's what makes them dangerous even to an experienced player. So, puzzles can keep being reused. But of course, like anything else, you have to have a realistic reason why it would be there, who would put it there. Usually for security, to keep you away from something. And puzzles aren't usually things that just trap you in a room. So it's not like going into a trap where you sneak around the wall and you're trying to avoid whatever it is. Most puzzles they're not there to. You are going to lock yourself into a puzzle if you start participating with it. That's what's going to happen with the puzzle. It's a pretty good start. Pretty good start. So that's puzzles. But no, Craig, ever see the Crystal Maze TV game show, aka Fort Boyard? I imagine has quite a few different puzzles. Any you seen on there that were interesting? Just wondering. I mean, I don't have to have seen the show for you to mention the puzzle. I'll probably be able to pick up on what you're talking about right away. If you want to bring that up, that's up to you. But puzzles. And I hope that teaches a lot of DMs that I see, even old school DMs, a lot of them avoid using puzzles quite often. I'm just like, I don't get why. I don't get why you would do that. They're effective. They're very effective for gameplay. And they're made to participate in the dungeon loop of Dungeons and Dragons. So if you're an old school D&D guy, you should always at least know that puzzles should be an option to you. And all you need to do is understand them. Oh, did a good impression of D&D puzzles. Right? I mean, yeah, I guess if you could imagine like there's some that's just based on magic. I don't know if they're copying that too well, like the invisible wall maze, where, I mean, the hint that you have invisible walls could be that you open the door, and, if you catch it, you're going to see, could be floating dust. That's just to tell you there's dust on the walls, the invisible walls, right? You could throw something in the room and it bounces off one of just bounces off like air. Well, it's bouncing off an invisible wall, right? And the way I treat invisible wall mazes is that it's like on a timer. So if you enter, this is where I say it's not like a normal trap. You got to by participating with a puzzle, you're going to lock yourself into it. If the timer runs out, the door that you came in could slam closed. Now you're sealed in from both sides, and that could even lead to a trap going off, and basically, you're sort of pushed back to the start, right? And that's if you survive a trap, it could be instant death. I mean, remember, puzzles are meant to be gambling with your life in D&D. A lot of times, gambling with your life. You step out of place, it could be something that just about kills you or outright kills you, right? Or even takes resources away from you. Like one puzzle can be pretty simple where I call it the sacrifice door, where it's a door that you don't want to put something on a campaign or a move forward space where if they get locked out of it, they can't just move forward in the dungeon. You don't want that if they're meant to move forward. But there is what I call the sacrifice door, where the door can talk to you, but it says it needs a sacrifice, but it won't tell you what the sacrifice is, right? It might tell you it can be one of three things, but it won't tell you what those three things are. It could say you got to give me your life, which would mean like say give you your blood, right? Which means hit points. That's resources in D&D, hit points, and who knows what's beyond that door? Could be some type of threat that you got to fight, and you're gonna give up hit points. It's resource in the dungeon when you're trying to survive, or it might say one of the three it might want a magic item. Wow, that's going to be hurting because you got to give up a magic item to get through the door. Wow, that's a big resource. Or it could say gold, and gold is a serious resource in D&D. Oh, like on Doctor Who. Yeah, it makes sense. That makes sense. I get that. Yeah, what's great about puzzles is no matter how experienced you are with them, even if you watch a show, you might think, well, I can go in and deal with that puzzle. No. The genius thing about puzzles is, I mean, some things like traps and that, if you use them once, okay, that guy is always going to know how to get through that trap, or that group might know how to get through that trap in the future. Puzzles are always meant to be random. So you can have an understanding. You can go in and you have experience to understand what you're meant to do right away. So that might speed up the process of you dealing with a puzzle, but it won't make the random any less secure for you. You won't be able to go into the room with 10 levers and just from the last time you dealt with it with a different character, you know which lever. That's not how that works. It's always going to be random. You might know that you have to pull a lever right away, so you're not going to waste time for the wandering monster to show up, but you're going to know it's random. It's not meant to be giving you, things. Then there's the odd puzzle would be like the mouth door, where I call it the sort of big mouth door, where it's going to ask you for its name. Say my name and I'll open up for you. Now, in that case, usually there should be a hint around about what the name is. That's a time where you can, it's just not random guessing it's asking. That's too out there for a random guess. So usually it's what you've done earlier in the dungeon. You've seen a name on something and it's meant to stick out at you. The DM is going to want you to have encountered this name at least once before you get to the door. So they'll purposely stick this in a place where the likely chance that you avoid it is just about impossible. And They won't even say the name out loud. A good game master doesn't say a written name out loud. They'll just show you, like they'll show it written out for you. Because when you get to the door, you don't just got to know the name. You need to know how to pronounce the name correctly so the door opens up for you. And if you read it and you don't pronounce it right, the door locks you out. So even if you can read a name, if it's difficult to say or you can't figure out how to pronounce the name, well, then there you go. And now the game master should know how it's pronounced, but they should not pronounce it for you. Some DMs will actually purposely pronounce it one time for you, and they won't say it again after that. Right? They'll throw you the hint with the pronunciation one time. I don't personally. I'll show you it written down. If I've done that puzzle in the past, it's here's the name. You ran into it like it's on a wall or something. So when you finally get to a certain door and the door is like, you need to say my name to be able to get and I'll open up for you. If not, I will not let you through. Well, at that point, you're talking to this magical door, and this big mouth on the magical door is asking for its name, and you gotta say it. You gotta say it right. Now, there could even be a trap with it where if you say it wrong, it doesn't just seal, it seals and zaps you, maybe even kills you. That's old school D&D. You're gambling with your life when you're dealing with puzzles. Same with traps, too. It's all meant to be somewhat deadly and threatening, but you learn. But what you really learn with puzzles is there's not much to learn other than you want to deal with it as quick as you can. So at least understanding how a puzzle is meant to function means you can at least get to the point of dealing with it right away, but you're never safe. Doesn't matter how many times you ran into it. That's the genius about puzzles, right? So that was my puzzle video today, covered. All right, let's talk about how I approach D&D and races in D&D. You've heard me, many of you have heard me say, I find a lot of players, if you give them an elf in old school Dungeons and Dragons, an old school, not just a new school, you give them an elf or you give them a race that's not human, they'll be playing almost like a human in cosplay, right? Well, because they won't play the elf that well. They won't play the dwarf that well. They'll have a hard time understanding a lot of writing and playing the personality. Some will try. Deeper thinking players can pull it off a lot better. But how do you get most people playing, say, an elf closer to what it is? Well, I've done things differently. I don't let you play an elf that's going to be from an elven society. So I always do where in my games in D&D, it's going to be from the human focus. But that means if you play a dwarf, that means you've grown up around humans, right? Or you play an elf, you've grown up around humans. And what I do is I ask all players to say, you don't need to take every aspect of an elf, but I want you to pick at least 3 aspects that you see here that you can understand, right? That is about the elf or about the dwarf. And I want you to apply that to the way you role play, the way you present the dwarf. You don't got to do everything, but I want you to pick 2 or 3, and you're going to play a dwarf that is not just from a dwarven society, you're from a human society. So it's okay that you play a bit more into the human side of it, but I want you to take at least 3 aspects from the halfling or from the elf or from the dwarf and really play that into your role play. And I find that effective to get more people, instead of just cosplaying an elf like a human with pointy ears, they'll actually role play a bit more of what an elf is into the character, knowing that I actually give them some realistic ease. You're an elf that has been raised in a human society. So leaning a bit into the human stuff is actually okay and realistic. And what I do is if you meet if you're a dwarf and you go to a dwarven society, they'll actually see you different. You're a dwarf who's been raised around humans. So I'll actually role play the NPC dwarves more like actual dwarves for you, right? Now, some players that are deep thinkers, if they want to really play more to what the dwarf or the elf is, I'll let them. It's not a rule, but it's one of these things where if I find players have a hard time just giving me an elf properly, like if they're going to play, it's going to be like, I picked him because he gets a plus with the short bow and the sword. I'm like, that's cool, dude, but you're still role playing an elf. So it has to be a bit more than you're just picking him because he has some abilities, right? Right. There's a bit of role play to be considered. And I want this to come across more like an elf than, say, a human with pointy ears. So instead of getting you to really drag on the entire thing, just pick 3 aspects you know for sure from reading it that you can understand. that you're going to apply for real to your role play, right? Like even though he's a elf in a human society, here's the aspects of the sort of elven society that he brings with him, like traits that are going to be in this character, right? And so I get more players playing more elf characters than say humans with pointy ears, right? So it's a lot less humans cosplaying. I think that's so effective that I'm saddened to see that the newer WotC games didn't pick up on, say, an element like that, where it's like, hey, if you make your things the way you are, your elves are like humans with pointy ears, right? And so I get the accusation. There's a lot of people that will criticize WotC for their elves and their dwarves, but that's cosplay. It's humans, with just a different suit on. Like I'm like, I don't want that, but I understand at the same time, players don't perfectly just play these things out in detail. Most, not all, some are really good at this stuff and can follow along and get the entire thing. But for the vast majority of players that just don't click with everything that they read about the elf, I'm like, well, what clicks with you? Like, what makes sense here? And I get them to actually tell me. Like, out of reading about the elf, what do you remember? What clicks with you? What really drills into your head? And they'll tell me, I'll be like, okay, well, that's naturally coming to you. Role play that in, but focus on role playing that in. Like actually focus on making that part of when you go to speak, I want you to consider, hey, with this aspect of what you're playing, would your character speak like that? So I want you to take that serious and start establishing the elf right away. Because if not, if you don't establish it, you'll just role play human with pointy ears, right? So I want there to be an established thing so you become used to it, you remember these things, and your character starts separating from, it's more like an elf than a human. I'll be able to tell the difference between when you're playing a human character and an elven character. Because if not, you see a lot of players just get in, and the human character that they play will be no different really than the elf, but the elf had a +1 to the sword or the bow. And so if you understand that most players aren't these advanced thinkers that we all would like them to be, I see a lot of game designers out there in the past where I'm like, I read the book, I'd be like, man, it's incredible design, pretty incredible design. It's too bad that only like 6 to 8% of our players can actually play like this. I could just tell in the old school, because it's an experiment. A lot of people don't know what the hobby is really like. It's not like game designers are getting out there and running the game for like, 200 or 300 people at the time. I was. So I knew that there's deep thinkers in certain communities. Still, they're hobbyists and they're a small number in the overall hobby. When you get out to the wider group, most people are not deep thinkers. They're really not. So designers would make games where I'm like, yeah, I guess they're for a niche group of people. The problem is it's hard to collect a lot of deep thinkers into one group. So I built up a roster. And when I would meet really deep thinkers, I'd be like, I'd start, applying them, because I run side games for, even if I had 2 or 3 really deep thinker guys into a game, I'd be like, dude, you're going to play the D&D with this group, but I also want you to come over here and play this game as well with these other guys. And they'd be brought into sort of like almost like a secret society of players I had, where I'd be offering a different game, not to insult the other players I had, but I'd be offering a different game for a special group of players that were the guys I would find that were the deepest, smartest players I could find. And find games where it's really calling upon really smart players and get them into a game together. Like Castle Falkenstein. I had a lot of success with that really hard game, but the reason I had success is I had a private roster of really, really good players. Oh, Philo made it. I just talked about I just went over the first part of this. Remember, it's not a script, so don't worry, you're not behind really. If you watch my puzzle video, you'll get enough out of that. But I talked a bit about the puzzles up front because just going over some of the content I did. Then I started digging into the way I get people to play more to the races in D&D, especially even in the old school, where most people, they might pick an elf for the pluses or benefits, but a lot of people would play. WotC gets accused of this, WotC players, but it's true in the old school as well. A lot of people just play with humans with pointy ears. So the way I would sort of solve the issue there, Philo, is do this. Go to them and go, okay, instead of trying to pretend that you can understand everything you read about the elf, I'm not going to, like, let's not pretend that you understand everything. You don't. And if you don't understand everything, it's going to be hard to apply. Pick out 3 aspects that make sense to you when you read the elf. Now, because, and the way I would do it is I would tell players, you're not going to play an elf from an elven society. You're not going to play a dwarf from a dwarven society. If you play halfling, it's not from a halfling society. When if you, it's gonna, the whole game is going to be from a human point of view onto the world. So if you play an elf in this human focused world, you're from a human society. But I want you to pick 3 aspects from the write up on the elf that you understand. I would tell players that you understand that makes sense to you without really a lot of hard work here. And then I want you to actively role play that in. So if you're going to speak for the character, I want you to think, would that character say this given that aspect? So I want you to actively role play that in so we can separate the elf that you're playing from, say, you playing a human later. So we don't have a human with pointy ears. But the freedom to lean a little bit more into the human side of things was, hey, you're an elf from a human society. So I'd still do a D&D as if it were a human-focused thing, where the way the world is looked at is from the human point of view. So if you were going to play an elf again, it'd be from a human society. And I would actually role play elves properly from an elven society, and they would actually treat elves differently if the elf was from a human society, obviously, right? But and that way I have more success. Now I would tell deep thinkers, hey, you can play a elf from a human society, but if you understand the whole thing, I don't care if you apply the entire thing. I don't care if you're more elf than anything. But how would I get the majority that weren't deep thinkers to actually play more like an elf instead of a human with pointy ears? I would say you're from a human society, so this will give up some ease up so we can understand why your elf isn't pure elf role play, but what are aspects that can make him separate from a human? Oh, cast, like however you want to look at it, but either way, it's the world is from a human point of view. And if most players can't really play elves right, and here's what happens with a lot of players. The pressure to play an elf right just turns into them playing a human with pointy ears. Like it blows up on them. So I said, well, how can I get more consistency out of every player coming into the game? Because it seems it wasn't just my game, but it was other games I was seeing. Consistency was for most players that weren't deep thinkers, when they go into a game, they play an elf. They play it because he had a +1 with a sword or +1 with a bow or some aspect, but they play it like a human with pointy ears. It would just completely collapse in the attempt to really role play that right. I said, well, how can I get the majority of those players to play an elf closer to what an elf is? But here's what I like about the idea. You'll hear all kinds of people talking about the view of the human onto the world, like from a human point of view onto what D&D is, how you judge the world. You want to know what? You can say that, Grim DM, and I totally get what you're saying, but players pulled it off. So whenever I said play a full-on elf for what it is, see, you guys coming to me, you're a lot of deep thinkers here, and you always got to remind yourself that in reality, because I got out and DM'd for like hundreds, actually thousands of players over the years. So I got out and did hundreds of players, not just a home group. And when I would say over 90% of players weren't that deep thinking at all, like they make up the majority. It also explains to you why WotC caters to them and not us hobbyists that are the minority, right? So I would get amongst a minority of hobbyists were expected to play elves. We actually probably do it without a problem, right? And understand, Grim, if I had a player like you come into the game, I just let you play an elf for what an elf is. And you could even take up the challenge of being very complex with the idea that you're an outcast, right? I would just have it that for the average player that wasn't like us, how could I get them? Because every time I would see them in other games playing, they would just play a human with pointy ears. So I'm like, I don't want that happening. I actually want players to play elves. But I understand, like, when I left where I started, I just realized the vast majority of people were not like some of us, right? They really weren't. A lot of the elf stuff that they would read wouldn't make sense to them. And if it doesn't make sense, it's hard to apply. And they just wouldn't. They'd give up. They fold on trying to apply it. They would just start playing themselves as an elf. So it's like there's that guy with pointy ears. It's the pointy ear part is the only part that says the guy's an elf. So how do I get that guy to not just play himself with pointy ears? Well, I'd say to him, okay, dude, I understand that you don't understand the whole thing, but I want you to pick out 3 aspects, right, that are going to make sense to you. And I want you to be sort of ignorant of this outcasting. I want you to be an elf that was just brought up, we'll come up with the reason why in the human society. So you're not going to be considered just outcasted from your thing. You're just going to have come up in a human society, and you're very ignorant, really, about the outside world, even about maybe even fellow elves, to be honest, right? So how do I get you to role play more to what an elf is? Get you on 3 aspects. Tell me what you understand. And then what you understand, I want you to actively role play that in. So if you're going to speak for the character, don't just carelessly speak. Stop. Have that moment of, wait, my guy wouldn't say that. That's because of this aspect that he understands from being an elf. And I got a lot of players that stopped playing the humans with pointy ears and started playing characters that were more at least leaning towards the elven bit. And then I would have it be odd. They would be treated like outcasts. But I let the player be ignorant about this. You're going to be ignorant about what an outcast is. You're going to play an ignorant elf raised in a human society. So your ignorance will be clear when you finally meet real elves from a real, elven place. They're going to think you as being odd. They might treat you a certain way because we had prejudice and ignorance in the old school that wasn't frowned upon, like, because we're fantasy. We don't care about the real world politics at the time. So it was okay to play prejudiced and that type of stuff into the game. And I'd be like, that's just how it's going to be. And I got more of those people playing elves closer than the other way around. And I just know a lot of guys that play with certain hobbyists. I get it. They grew up playing with hobbyists, and they have a hard time imagining that most people, over 90% of players, are just not your wisest thinkers in the game. Like, these are guys that if you say, here, read the elf, they don't get it. They don't get it. And what ends up happening in most cases is why you hear the criticism out there of people not playing elves well, and it's quite a popular criticism, even for the old school players, is because what people would do when you put that pressure on them, they'd fold. A well-integrated elf, yep, that's might be the way I put it there. So instead of like even understanding their outcast, they would be just growing up around humans and almost as ignorant as humans to a certain degree on certain things. But that ignorance was going to be played up by the player anyway. So it would end up being more realistic to the character. We could actually play off their ignorance as something more realistic to the setting, which then keeps some flavor. But I have these players now doing aspects of an elf where usually their heads blow up and they go to human with pointy ears. I'm like, how can I reverse that trend? I was so successful with that a lot of DMs stole that idea from me. And I still like the idea. A lot of people say, I'd rather just play a human-centric world, like where you play humans, where I'm like, well, I actually do that. But I can do it where it's a human-focused, centric sort of focus, but you can still play an elf, but you're from a human society. So everything is still seen from the human point of view. So elves, even though you're playing an elf, the elven society is still foreign to humans. But it's just as foreign to the integrated elf into the human society. He's almost, in some cases, unless I had a more thoughtful player. If I had a deeper player, that guy could learn more about his own people, the elves, understand them better, show off the traits more, role play them properly, and even have a better understanding of what the society is going to be like. So it wasn't like I'd hold a player like you back and say, you can't play an elf as an elf. I would just say, how could I get this other guy who is going to blow his head up and not play right? How can I get him playing closer to that, right? Second edition AD&D. And after you go ahead and you DM for about 400 and some players, Grim DM, what you learn is over 90% of those 400 and some players can't play them right. And almost at every other DM's table, they would blow up and the DMs would have a hard time with it. That's how that worked, just so you know. And I have the fucking straight on experience to know this for sure. And watch DMs suffer through taking on players all the time. Go to Dragon's Foot. And we had discussions even on the Dragon's Foot forum. where they talk about players not playing elves and dwarves right. Very popular discussion. That's what most people use, yeah. And most people blow the fuck up. So you got to understand, there's guys where I would understand this. I would say to a guy, you play with your home group at home, right? He'd be like, yeah. So I'm like, you're isolated with you and your friends, maybe at the odd time bringing another hobbyist in, right? Yeah, I'm like, well then, dude, you don't know. You're lucky. I'm glad you had that experience. And I had a group of players that I could do that with. I could go play with them and they could play the elves fine, right? But you got to understand, I'm a public game master who's running for hundreds of guys. So when I would get out, I'd be like, okay, dude, can you do this? And then I'd start finding out, oh shit, okay, so outside of our small circle, most people can't. That's what WotC caters to. WotC just didn't make it easier for you to play an elf and make it a human with a pointy ears because that wasn't popular. They did that because that's how the majority of people were playing the game. So they're catering to what they're seeing. If not, Grim DM, if everyone was more like what you might think it is, WotC would have went the other way around because they were trying to appease the majority, not actually go against them. They weren't trying to design a game in the way you think, at least not back at the time. When they brought out third edition, it was more to play to what they see the majority doing, not play to the minority of hobbyists, right? Oh, just the default elf. Most people wouldn't play them right. It's so popular that if you go to the second edition, which they had big conversations, because I understood it right away. Why were guys talking about this on DF? Because they started doing classified games. So a lot of the guys went from playing at home to playing either online or meeting up with random people. And what the guys would come back and go, man, I played with a group all my life, never had this issue. I just went to like 3 different groups, and these guys do not play elves right. They wouldn't play dwarves right. And then you see WotC. What's WotC doing? They're catering to the majority of players. So like action, why are they giving more hit points? Why are they making the characters more bendable superheroes? Because more people wanted to do the fighting, even though the old school gaming said fighting is something you should avoid most of the time. What would you see most people actually doing? Leaning into the action. So most people are leaning into the action, and most people want to. So if you're a business trying to make money, you don't go after the hobbyist who represents less than 10% of players and DMs. You go after the vast majority of people that are going to play to action, are not playing, are picking elves because they have bonuses and not playing them that right at all. So that's what WotC did. So you can see it. And then when you get to Dragon's Foot, it sort of gives itself away. As soon as the guy stepped out of their little circles or bubbles of playing with their same friends for like 20 years, and they got out to the public, because I would tell guys, and they wouldn't even believe me at first. They'd be like, a lot of guys don't play elves right. I remember the guys going to classifieds on Dragon's Foot, and then after like meeting up with 2 groups, they're like, I think Condor has a point. I'm like, yeah, I have a point. Of course I do. It's just most people don't understand it. See, what's easier for a hobbyist to understand that actually care about the role play and digging in and getting into the slower pace, long campaigns like we would. Most people are there for a quicker game, action-packed, action-based. And if you don't believe me, just go around and listen to streams of so-called old school guys talking about the game. You'll notice they don't talk like I'm talking. They don't even talk like you're talking. Go listen to them. They talk about, man, a higher level was really hard because we would do action, and the fights really break down at that point. Now, me and you, Grim, would know that you don't do a lot of fighting when you get to higher level. And even when you do, it's meant to be chaotic. It's not broken at all. Now, me and you know that. Me and you know higher level treasure is there for experience points, role play, and everything else is supposed to build you up. Me and you know that. But over 90% of the people in the hobby don't. So even though we got the wisdom of that, you go check out all the conferences, go to the panels of guys talking about old school D&D. At higher levels, it's broken, they'll say. Well, me and you know it's not broken. But why are most people saying it's broken? Because what I'm telling you is the example, what most people, they have a different view of the game. And even though they act like they're offended by WotC, I'm like, you can be mad at WotC, but if you go back to 3rd edition, it was more catering to you than you give it credit for. Oh, that's my cup of tea right there. See, I could bring in a player, and yes, if I met some decent players, I can get to it. But go try to DM for about 400 to 500 players in your first 10 years. Go try that. See how easy it is to get them. The way I got them was here's 3 aspects, give me that, we'll play you into a human society. That was consistent, easy, and it worked. So I go from having a smart player, I meet them. So in a group, you might get a really smart player. He could play the elf, no problem. I might get another player I could coach into playing an elf, no problem. Not everyone is playing an elf, mind you. But what about most players, right? Most players didn't play it that well. They break. You got to get out there and see the conversations because this is why most people had the issue. Most people didn't play it that well. And most DMs, unlike us, well, they weren't like us. Most DMs would let it just slide. Yeah, but I'm talking before. How could I say? Not everyone had splat books, right? And then when you get into it, what most see, here's the thing, Grib DM, I'd have to see your game too. I had a lot of guys tell me they're playing else, right? And I go watch, and I'm like, well, how much are you role playing? How much is it even necessary he's putting it into the character? And what is it to play an elf to begin with? How much socializing are you doing? See, I do a shitload. So I go in, I know this is, you're going to develop into an elf properly, or at least in the aspects of it. What would I find? Most people just did not play too well to it. On instinct, they play themselves. That's how most old school guys did. If I said, develop a character, I'd be like in socializing. So there'll be a question asked to the elf. Now, who would answer? The elf, the developed character, or with the guy? If it was, his name was Tim. So is it Tim answering the question? Or is it a thoughtful elf that's not human answering the question? The way an elf would from an elven society. Most of the time you get Tim. Tim would answer the question. If I said, Tim, were you thinking of the elf or were you just instinctively answering the question? Tims were usually guilty of instinctively answering the question. So the pressure to get somebody to properly role play instinctively through answering questions, reacting and socializing, social interaction, how would I get them to play an elf outside of answering instinctively like Tim? Well, I get them on 3 aspects. And I'd be like, before you just answer as Tim, you must apply this thinking. I don't want to just hear you reply as Tim, because that's what you're going to do most of the time. I ask you a question, you're going to reply to me like Tim. And it starts turning into Tim in a lot of different characters. And how do we separate the character from Tim? How does the character not become Tim anymore? So I hear a lot of guys say, oh, they run Elvis, right? And then I go watch and I'll be like, okay, there's minor aspects you're doing overall, but in the social interaction part, because that's the part where you're going, that's the real part where you're going to be challenged to play an elf properly. Because most people don't. That's the part where you're really challenged. It's most of the time if a question comes up, it's the player answering very lightly, right? But it's going to be Tim answering most of the time as Tim. Now I'll be like, well, Tim, you got to answer as an elf. You're an elf. You're not Tim the human. You're an elf. And you're an elf from a fantasy world, right? So how do I get you to play to that? Oh man, again, that's another. The PC people can be challenging, but it's social interaction is really the area. A lot of people can do an elf would check this thing out the same way, but social interaction is really where you develop who the character is, right? Yeah, that's a lot of people did the PC gaming coming in. It's just that when I hear people tell me people played elves well, most of the time I go back and I'd be like, I guess I just have a higher standard than most of the old school guys get me. I have a very high standard, extremely high standard. So my high standard is you can't, if you're playing an elf, you're not Tim the human. Right. So when a question is asked to you by an NPC in the game, I don't want to know what Tim thinks. I want to know what your elf character thinks. And your elf character should be affected by being an elf and even the way they respond. And that means you're going to have to get used to adjusting that character way. It doesn't take forever, but you're developing a personality. I did like 70 live sessions on here. People were quite happy with my older channels. I just haven't done a live play in a long time. It's not hard. Just think. You just got to think like an elf. So I give you examples that most people recognize, Grim DM. So it's like this. Do most people answer as themselves when they're not developing? Especially if you go back to like AD&D 1E, go back to BECME, go back to original D&D. The idea of developing your character was just not even part of the game, right? So you would just answer, if you're in social interaction, you just be Tim answering as Tim, even if you played an elf, right? Second edition starts caring more about who the character is identity-wise. So now the game is somewhat pushing you towards, don't answer as Tim, answer as an elf. So how would an elf think? They think differently than a human. So Tim's a human. So I need him to stop and think, well, would you so quickly answer the question like an elf? Like, would that be what an elf would do? Would you be more thoughtful? Would you be more slow in some of your interactions and some of the ways you reply? And should you purposely stop to think? Because the elf would, not just that you're doing it as a player of the game. And would you be more calm in your interaction compared to, say, you just shot your mouth off? Is that Tim shooting his mouth off? Would your elf shoot the mouth off? And would an elf overall, with these traits, shoot their mouth off? And I've actually done a pretty good video recently on doing social interaction. You should go check that out. Now, I do examples in it, which is difference in cadence of speaking and tones to do unique voices. I'm very deep on social interaction, and I have a whole shitload of videos covering this. They think differently. They live a different life. They live longer. They think differently. They're more patient. It's what makes them different. And if you don't separate these two, you get humans with pointy ears. That's what you get. You get Tim the human answering as Tim. Now, if you go back to AD&D 1E, they don't care. There's no pressure on you to do this. Voices don't really matter because you could do special voices that will go away when you really think about it. To me, it's about thinking in the mind game. So I heard a lot of guys that do special voices and then they would fucking crap the bit. Couldn't think their way out of a paper bag when it came to actually dealing with the other parts of the game. The voices can get you by so long, but the imagination gets you further ahead. Mannerisms, well, it depends too. Like a lot of guys just do the but Graham, I get what you're saying, and you're not the only one who was, how could I say, secluded with a group of normal hobbyists. A lot of guys were. I'll work to get them there, but what does that mean? And you're talking about one group. Remember, I'm a public GM. I'm dealing with over 400 people, at least in my first 10 years, at least over 400. Tone works better. Most people can't do voices. And voices only get you so far. Like, really, it's your imagination that really plays on. It's better to work on tone than it is to do a special voice. And remember, special voices weren't a big thing early on. They never were. Wasn't the thing. Imagination takes care of it, because go talk to any player without doing a special voice and just do a difference in tone, feminine, lower, and then cadence in the way you talk, but not just doing voices, just tone difference. If you do softer tone with, say, a softer female type of character, if you do a deeper tone, and just ask players afterwards, did you think that was me talking to you, or did you really take it in as the female merchant? They take it in as the female merchant all day long. Manipulation and imagination works like small triggers. Well, I've been DMing for decades, since 1991, and I had thousands of sessions and about over 2,000 players that I ran the game for. So, got that covered. If I had one group for about 10, 20, 30 years, yeah, I mean, that'd be no problem. That'd be great. And I sort of could say I sort of had elite groups. Like I said, I separated certain guys that were really good. So you go into them and you could just read like everything you're talking about, I could do with them. But when I get to the wider majority, that just doesn't work with them so well. That's why WotC serves the wider majority and not the minority. If they can do them. Yeah. I don't punish people for not doing it, but it's an aspect of the game I enjoy. Yeah, but some people could do voices and then they do one voice. Some people could do a variety. Most people can't do the voices. So it's like if you're at a group, see, you're talking about your limited experience with a few people. I'm a DM who's a public DM, having experience with hundreds of players. And so I'm going to run into why WotC caters to them in their game because I learned why. That's why it made more sense to me when I seen the WotC editions coming out because they're not catering to a minority of people. And I always talk to people on here because I always say that's going to be the difference in experience. I know a lot of YouTubers that will disagree because they'll be at the home group and they have a small group of hobbyists and they've developed, they can do voices, they can do everything. I'm like, man, it's cool. There's nothing wrong with it. Though it's not really a big issue with the voices. Manipulation through tone works just as well. And manipulation of the imagination. And that works on all the other people that don't do voices, which are the vast majority of players. I mean, the vast, like you're talking like over 90% of players in the hobby. And then you got to remember, most people didn't have a group of friends to play with. So when you get out, you start realizing that's why tournament play was a big issue for AD&D 1E because the company TSR, and they even talk about this. Go back and you'll find Gary talked about this openly. He understood that most people never had a group at home to play with. So they started doing tournament play to have public DMs to take care of them so they could become customers. And that's going to be the vast majority of your customers. That's where the one-to-one time and the shared world thing comes in. And that's WotC also went after them because they realized that is actually the majority. They want action. They're not deep on the role play. So that's why you'll hear WotC get criticized for humans with pointy ears. I mean, when you get out and actually go beyond, say, a small group of hobbyists and you have real vast experience out in the hobby, you start running into why they did tournament play, why WotC serves them and not us, why all that. But if you're just at home with a small group, of course, if you're playing with a small group of hobbyists, the idea of relating with a game master who's went out and ran for 400 some players in his first 10 years, and he's meeting the vast majority of people, we're going to have a different experience. Now, my similar experience is when I get sort of elite players. So I get them, separate them. That would be like the home group. Take them, no issue. If you're at a gaming club, if you're meeting other hobbyists, of course they had them. Yeah, I talked about this openly. See, if you keep up with my stuff, Grim, you know what I'm talking about. So in my first 3 to 4 years, it's all hobbyists I play with. So this. I even did a video on this recently, a whole painting this out so people would understand. I said I was in a hobbyist group through the military mainly, but we had a bunch of other good players. And for the first 3 or 4 years, and even if I include my player years, they're exactly what you're talking about. I get out, had no problem. They play well, perfect. It's when I crossed over after like 4 years of gaming with them, and I went out to the wider civilian public when I finally realized, holy fuck. Like what? And it was like a wake-up call. I go from guys that were hobbyists that could play the game really well to, wow, these guys don't know the elves that well. They're picking them for, these are the min-max. These are the majority of people. You get out and you start meeting them and you're like, oh, so you guys don't do the same things. No, they weren't like hobbyists at all. And the second I got out to start dealing with them, that was a wake-up call. And I talked to Frank Metzner about this. He also had that experience. Frank Metzner went from doing staff work where they run the games for people that knew what was up. But the reason him and Moldbay started writing the game differently for Beckme was when he started getting out to the wider majority. And he exactly had the same experience I had. So I talked to Frank Metzner about this directly, especially on Dragon Split, but even in person. So I talked to Frank Metzner. I said, how shocking was it when you got out and guys really didn't understand the game that well? He's like, yeah, it was hard to take in. It was hard to even get them to play the game right on any aspect. But if you're secluded with hobbyists, like I was for the first like say 7 years of my gaming, you don't know. And when you get out to the vast majority, that's when you're just like, holy fuck. But you play with a few. No problem. If you bring them around hobbyists, it's not hard. So no Grim DM, you clearly didn't run into the vast majority. And it's like, why would WotC serve those players and not what you're talking about? Why would AD&D 1E go to tournament and focus on those players? And why would Frank Metzner and Mulvey start writing for those players and not the ones you're talking about? There's a reason. You're welcome. Well, that was a good one there. Puzzles are really, really good there, Miles. They work on anyone. And that means even the fucking smart to the more average. But there's a reason. And think about WotC. It serves the people I'm talking about. And everything I'm telling you about Grim DM that you're not agreeing with, they have the majority of people. They make the most money. You go back to Frank and Mulvey's writing. They are talking to them and not us. Frank Metzner himself acknowledges this openly. So why would they be seeing the same thing I am, but suddenly you come along and me, Frank Metzner, the TSR staff, WotC, we all agree, but Grim DM has a different experience. I get it. You get lucky. That's all it is. But when you get out to the real vast majority, there's a reason why companies are going down my lane. There's a reason why TSR agrees with me. There's a reason why Frank Metzner and Mulvey started writing for them. And I just didn't know it. When I finally got out to the open, I realized, okay, so this is why WotC is serving these people. This is why Frank Metzner and Mulvey are writing for them and not us. Because I did criticize Frank. I said, well, why do you sort of write for like guys that probably have a hard time understanding most of the stuff? He's like, because they do. And they started realizing that when they got out to conventions. And they'd start having vast amounts of people come out to the conventions for a while. And Frank starts running open games. This is where he goes from playing with what you would say in the fucking realm of good people to getting out to the vast majority. And they realized, oh shit, we have an issue here. Go to Open RPG. They had 10,000 players. Go to Thardfar. Thardfar was, they had about 5,000 amongst their fucking clique. Thardfar was developed for what? For guys like the hobbyists, like us? Nope. For the vast majority. That's why WotC agrees with me. TSR staff agrees with me. The dungeon magazines, you can actually find ones where they start writing more for those people than people like us. They even start suggesting some of the things I'm talking about here. Right? Like some players aren't going to get what an elf is right away. They start giving you warnings. They start giving DMs warnings about this stuff. Right? I'm like, yeah. And then when you get over to Dragon's Foot, all the guys start having that experience because they're getting out to the classifieds. Classifieds is opening up to more people than their hobbyist friends. So it's nice that you had the experience, but the thing is, Frank Metzner, Mulvey, TSR, WotC, Dragon's Foot, they all completely had a different experience in the hobby. They started having a similar experience to what I'm talking about, right? So when I talk about that stuff, it just floors some people because and if you actually pay attention to the other YouTubers, a lot of them talk like those people. Like, I'm glad you're watching me. Go watch some of the other guys talk. They talk about focused on action in the game, right? They talk about high level, like as if combat is supposed to be done continuously at high level, but combat breaks. Why would guys be talking like that? You know better. Us hobbyists know better than you even think like that. So it's not a broken aspect at higher level. You're not supposed to be fighting continuously at higher level. You're not even supposed to be fighting early on. But most people did. Why did most people do that? Because they weren't deep thinkers. So all the evidence is what I'm saying is I'm talking about things people should relate with. If you get lucky enough that you are in with certain people, like a small group, or you get into a gaming club or some new people come in where they adjust really well, that's lucky you, dude. Lucky you. But that's not what the rest of us figured out. That's not what TSR figured out. It's why they adjusted their game to that majority. It's why WotC adjusted it even more to them. And then WotC proves it. If we are the majority in some way, why would WotC adjust that and then pick up the majority and make mass amounts of money? And it's like you say, like you got out and you had a minor experience, you admit, okay, well, fair enough. If you get out and get lucky and you get the right people around certain people, I can see the influence. With Frank and Cask, I talked to Tim quite a bit as myself too. What business does sell more material being accessible will always be a thing. It's accessible to a wider audience, but that's the thing. The wider amount of people aren't that bright that want to come into the game. That's what I meant when I stepped out of my little hobbyist zone, right? Oh, you can run the game without the pressure, but I just wanted the wider majority to have more success with playing elves. I just watch all kinds of tables where they're not doing it. And the DMs aren't even actually pressuring them to do it. So it's like, how do I get Tim to stop playing Tim and develop a character like second edition, identity for the character, right? I adjusted and said, okay, well, if you're not going to remember all this every moment you're role playing, how can I get stuff that you're going to remember and really play into the character well? That's what I would do. Now, what did I say about probably 15 times so far, if you've been paying attention? For guys like us that could just do it without a problem, there's no pressure. Play the elf properly. It's not that you're not supposed to fight. It's think of fighting like this, Miles. So I'll give you an idea. Fighting is something that can happen and will happen. Your job as a player is to avoid it as much as possible early on. And then when you get to higher levels, you got to understand, you can't run around and just fight like all kinds of monsters because they have to be appropriate to fight. Like there's options to fight dragons and everything else. So if I just throw a list like just a continuously amount of different encounters, they're all going to be chaotic and could potentially blow up on you. That's if you're trying to play in some continuous loop of action, right? Now, minor action, the minor early level stuff can be more accessible to fight once you're getting up to like 3, 4, 5. That's why Gary Gygax started most of his guys at level 3 after they had experience. So you can skip the really skipping out on a lot of combat and the training to get gold. And that's why do you think they do gold to XP? Because they actually didn't expect you to get your levels through just combat early on. And that's why the training is sort of lined up with the goal, so is the experience. The idea is between like level, say, 4 to say like 9, the sort of mid-level fighting, you get more action. When you get to higher levels, now you can wipe those out, but now the fights are more dangerous. So the idea that you're going to fight higher level, like bigger monsters like that, like you're fighting the goblins and sort of the mid-range monsters, you're not going to get a continuous loop of action. Now it's your job to be more picky about where you actually focus yourself. You got more magic items, you're stronger, you can do more, right? So now you can go fight the dragon if you want to and save the town, right? Now you can go, you're not going to get the same continuous loop. Anybody knows that. Now, if you don't know that, which a lot of DMs didn't, they would try. They would actually get you up to a higher level, and then they're trying to create a loop of action where it's sort of continuous, where that's really not the place. You're more in control as a player now at higher levels. So you can be more careful where you go. There could be a lot of action in the place if there's certain types of monsters, but even then, how much action is there going to be when you can walk through a lot of it? So then action becomes a little just more controlled. And you're still watching. You're still avoiding, because remember, survival is still the name of the game, right? So what is it? Is it action-based or it's survival? And then if you go outside of games like D&D, this is a war gamer mindset I'm talking about. War gamer mindset means action is meant to be dangerous. It's something for the most part you avoid, but there is a bit more action-packed sort of center of the game, where now you can fight goblins a bit more at like level 4, 5, 6. You can kick some ass, you can have some fun, right? But those early on ones, you're going to die really easy. But here's what would happen: a lot of guys would try to do from level 1 to 3 a lot of action. So they started coming up with this loop of play, which made no sense to me. Make 5 characters. Make 5 characters because we're actually going to try to do action early on. You're actually going to run at fights more than you're going to avoid them. It's less about risk and reward. You're going to start going after fights. Why do you think WotC adjusts their game to the more action early on right away? Because people are already doing it. And why do it in a broken loop of having 5 characters when realistically you could survive with your first character? For the most part, with a lot of danger, you might actually have to make another character up. You shouldn't have to make 5. You could die in puzzles, traps. There's all kinds of ways to die outside of combat. But the point is, there's a good chance if you play it right and you play survival on mind and you're avoiding, where it's risk and reward stuff, you avoid combat right up to the point where you're a higher level and you can handle what's coming. So then you can handle combat a little bit more better. But it's patience. It's called patience. It's, how can I say, earning it. Yeah, but that's not wrong, Philo. But what happened was you had war gamers that made a hobby, and most of the war gamers didn't cross over to play. So when you start getting people outside of the war gaming, they like the action. Well, the big bad evil guy should be there at the stage where you treat them like a dragon. So now the big bad evil guy is doing something that needs to be taken care of, but the dragon is attacking the town. So this is where the players could take the risk of going up to fight the dragon then the byproduct is you're going to get a big treasure, potentially shit like this. So there's all kinds of reasons playing the heroes. You're at higher level. Now you can play the heroes against the big bad. And the big bad is going to be a threat. Survival is the key, but there could be an end to the gameplay. Survival also could be taking up the big bad because there's such a threat to something that not just your safety is in harm's way. It's a lot of people, but now at higher levels, you're in a better position to be able to do more than just take care of yourselves. See, think about early on like you're a nobody. You're the farmer coming off the farm. So you're a nobody. By the time you get up to a certain point, now you're a somebody. But you're a somebody with options, power, magic items, just more experience overall. Now you have more options, right? You're not just a nobody anymore. Now you can play the hero finally. But when you come off the farm at level 1, you're no hero. You're nobody. You don't get to be hero from day 1. You get to be hero when you're like level 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever the fuck you're at that point, right? And at that stage, now you can go be the hero that can handle fighting the big bad. If you meet the big bad early on, the idea is the big bad should be such a threat to you that you're not really going to be able to handle the big bad. But it's like meet the dragon at level 2. Meet a dragon at level 2. You think you can fight the dragon at level 2? No way. You're still just the farmer coming off the farm. So you got to earn your way up to the point you can actually fight the big bad. But even then, it's still dangerous because combat is from a war gamer point of view. So even at the higher level, combat is still considered very dangerous. Oh, there you go, Craig. Yeah, like by the time you build up, you feel confident about what you're doing. You're beautiful. I'm glad Miles is here for this. Miles, I sympathize with you, my friend. How could I say? A small group of people like, especially war gamers. You got to understand, Miles. It's not to insult you. I want you to. This is a mindset difference. It's not to say what you're doing is bad. So just understand. Like I'm not trying to insult the way you and your players prefer to play the game. I really want you to get the difference here. If you understand war gamers, the idea of slow, gradual gameplay, like that mindset that's the mindset that carries over early on into tabletop role-playing games before the guys know what most people are going to be into. So I have a bit of that old mindset that got built into me. So I like the be careful and avoid combat. I know that's not your cup of tea, and I get it's not the majority's cup of tea, right? I totally get that. You want the action from the get-go. Most people do. And it's too bad the company didn't figure this out. I sympathize more with you than you'd ever think. I didn't like the way Watsy did it, but I get the wanting of action, right? It's one of the things I argued for early on. I always said we should have some more hit points because a change in hit points would change to the point you could do action more, right? Without needing to change gameplay too much, right? Always thought that was the thing. But you get to the hobbyists or the guys that are tight about it. No, right? Old gaming is you appreciate every part of the game. So I appreciate the social interaction. I appreciate talking to the other characters, avoiding the combat. I appreciate living in the moment, and the action doesn't need to be the thing, but the action was going to come. So it's one of these, and I enjoy long campaigns. Like a lot of WotC, or even the newer guys, outside of hobbyists, would like to play 20-session campaigns, 30-session campaigns. I came from a group of guys that would play campaigns for like 2 years. So it's like, what you had to just understand is the action was coming. You get what I'm saying? And then you be patient, and you be playing with a lot of war gamers that were going to be very, very patient people. And you'd enjoy every little aspect of the game. Live in the moment. The action isn't the only thing that makes the game. But that was the way they said. It's the way I experienced too, and the way I like it. And taking a long time to get to a certain point where you could do something, there's a lot of fun in that. It's hard to explain that to people that don't go through the slower pace or learn how to enjoy it. Like I bring new guys in that want the action, but if they play with the right group, they'd start seeing the fun that you could have outside of just doing the action, right? Oh, I get it. Just there's more action overall. Just understand that's the big difference here is it's about survival. And so surviving means most action should be avoided because it drains resources. See, it's one thing to say it's fun, but if you're a war gamer, it's like playing in a war game. When you play in a war game, these are war gamers that made it. If you do a minor thing that seems like really cool, I could step up here to do this, the other player would take your impatience and destroy you. Grib, I'm introducing you. I'm introducing you to one of the guys, right? I'm not saying Miles is dumber. I'm just saying these are guys that are part of the majority. They want action. They're not used to the slower pace of the game or even the very long campaigns. And I'm not saying anything you're doing wrong with Miles. It's good to have a guy like you around, Miles. I love this. And I really deeply hope you don't feel insulted because I'm just trying to explain the difference. It's not a better or worse thing. I hope you understand that. And I really do mean it. I'm not saying it's a better or worse thing. I get that there's some guys that still in the new school that will do a little bit more puzzle. I don't like the slog and timing it takes to do combat and WotC because I find it takes too long. But like Grim is pointing out here, you definitely got a lot more to shine with. If you go back to old school, the idea of getting into action early just means you could just die so easily. That's why you'd have to have make 5 characters, right? But if you avoid the combat, the idea is you get a better chance to survive. So by the time you're level 3 or 4, you survive with that character instead of usually needing to make a 5. But now you're more capable. Now you're at the more hit points. You have a little bit more to fire within. You're not doing that straight out of the gate, right? That's all it is. It's just not straight out of the gate. Oh yeah, well see, it's an adjustment there. But the thing is, what I would say to Grim too, most people were already like that in the old school. No, you're right. How can I say? It's the way the game is set up for survival. It's for if you go into the new game. Because I ran 5.52, the 2024, and it's first off, it's gonna put you in good position. The amount of times you could be saved outside of dying is a lot easier. The amount of things you have to avoid getting damaged, even at lower hit points, even at just a 1d6. It's just better overall. If Miles, if I took you to an AD&D second edition game and said, here's a wizard, you'd realize, oh, snap of the finger, he can die. Easy. There's almost no protection for the guy. Like, there, first off, the game doesn't tell the player to position their wizard in a certain way. So it's no grid. It's not like grid in that way. It's not a grid game. So you're not positioned. You don't get a lot of powers to really protect yourself. You're limited to like one spell. And that's usually going to be very limited to what you could do, right? Your chance of doing combat with weapons, almost non-existent. You don't have feats. You don't have so many different ways that you can resist death. Like you get hit once, right? And you have the 4 hit points. That's it. Usually you're dead. Like you're dead. You're instantly dead. The slightest stepping out of line, you're dead. And the truth is, the Grim, that was already happening in old school. The max hit points. The attempt to give some of this sort of gameplay you're seeing with WotC now was, that's why I say the writing was already on the wall. I get why WotC served the game that way. Some don't, but you still have more layers. And that's not to say a bad thing. The game wants you to have a better chance at survival if you're willing to step up and do more action. So it makes sense. Like if you're in a game where avoiding all that action is really part of the gameplay, do they need to give you so many layers of protection? No. The idea is you should just be avoiding it. But it's so on edge that one hit, you're dead. Like just one hit, you're dead. There's a good chance if you get hit and go down as a wizard, you're going to survive. You're still going to be brought back up. You're going to live. In 5.5. In second edition, they start leaning into it a bit more because you could do the -10 gimmick. So at Death's Door. So you can see the writing on the wall because you go to most majority outside of the hobbyist. Most were already doing what Miles is doing with WotC. Most people like the action. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think Brim made the pointer too. He has his preference. I have the sort of similar preference. Once you step out, most people want the action and they want ways of surviving a bit longer so they're not just outright knocked out of the fight and making a new character. So it doesn't mean death isn't in 5.5. I killed a few characters, not killed. How can I say they died? So I don't just pretend WotC is this perfectly protected game. So it's not. But is it as deadly as old school? No, it's not. In reality, it's just not. No insult to Miles or anybody who does WotC. There's just more layers to survive. Like you have to roll so many times to see if you die, right? Oh, I've done the same thing too. But when you go to the wider majority in the old school, they do max. And if you guys don't believe me, go check out the other YouTubers that are doing old school gaming. And you know what you're going to hear commonly? We give out max hit points. Common Grim. Like I tell you, the majority are the way I tried to explain to you earlier. If you don't believe me, go check out all, like the majority of the fucking YouTubers that do old school wouldn't agree with me and you. Like they do max. All of them do max. Just about every one of them. That's so common. Like, so an action is common, early action, 5 characters, because they don't understand the game that well, Grim. Like most people actually don't understand, the old school guys don't understand old school that well at all. They actually do the action. That's why you get the multiple characters at the start. And they actually think the late game is broken because they think you're supposed to go on through action. Oh, yeah. Being fragile is just part of the game. But what you do is you're fragile. So what do you do? This is what me and Grim would know. You avoid a lot of things. You think risk and reward like a war gamer. It's like, okay, we could go fight them. No. We avoid that. We get things done so we don't run into the wandering monster in the dungeon. right? And we understand how dangerous it is. Like, say you're playing that wizard with 1 or 2 hit points. You understand just how fucking diddly it is for you to run into monsters at that point. Like, you understand how diddly. That's why there was no such thing as non-combat encounters. They just expected you to negotiate, to talk, all the options for encounters. If you really read old school, it's from wargaming mindset. It's about avoiding the encounter, avoiding action, negotiation, talking. And actually, that was the one area where guys would say, well, we did have some social interaction role play, but a lot of it for guys, because they eat a lot of dungeon crawls, would be actually interacting with the monster that you're trying to avoid. The negotiation, because you're that fragile, right? So the old game is you were fragile. That's exactly it. Early on, all were fragile. But what most old school guys didn't get is they didn't understand the game to be survival. They would start trying to do action, just like the new school guys from the get-go, right? That's why they maxed out the hit points so they could handle the fights. Why do you think most guys were doing that? Yep. Philo gets it. Philo totally gets it. I mean, I know we get it, guys here. That's why I said I tracked certain guys to my channel. I totally get it. You guys understand it's a survival game. It's okay to play fragile when you know how to survive by avoiding stuff, right? But Philo's knocking it out of the park here. It's you use everything you can to survive. And survival is avoiding combat when you're fragile. That's it. It's avoid combat. But a lot of people want the action. And a lot of old school guys misunderstood our game. They'll talk like they understand the game, but in reality, they didn't understand the game that well. That's why they max out hit points early on, make 5 characters, because it's assumed you're going to go into action. And then they would tell you the late game was broken. Because they would try to cycle in action in the late game in the same way. I'm like, guys, if you still understand that no matter what level you're at, you're still playing survival. Like, you might have more means to fight at a certain higher level, like, say, going into 4th level, 5th level, 6th level. You can fight the goblins a little easier. I get that. That's where you can lean into the action, right? So the game actually lets you lean into the action. There is a point where leaning into the action. And 2nd edition, as Grib would know, plays more to this than 1st edition. So we had, it doesn't mean 1st edition didn't have the -10 rule. It's just most guys didn't use it. 2nd edition, a lot of DMs use the -10 rule, right? So you could bleed to death. That means you can still survive. You could be at -3 bleeding to death and have a better chance of survival. You can start doing a bit more action at levels 4, 5, 6, but with the same monsters that you really couldn't do action with at levels 1, 2, and 3. Well, you could do strategy, like the warrior could block the doorway, so then he can't be surrounded, and they can't get out to the thief and the wizard, right? So, or you could kill the leader off right away. So it wasn't that you couldn't do action, but here's Philo even talking about this wargaming strategy is you just don't run at combat like openly to fight. Like, you run at combat thinking. So you have to be careful. Maybe you want to get in the doorway. So then you only get to face one, and they can't just get to your other guy, and they can't surround you, right? Or you want to take out a leader in the group. You want to break moral before the fight even starts. And most of the time, if you do it right, your strategy should have the enemies running off even before they're all dead. So it doesn't mean you can't go into combat. When you go in, it has to be strategy and work for you. If there isn't a move like that and you're very fragile, you want to avoid it, and you want to avoid it without strategy being in your favor. Well, to a degree, that's it, but go watch a lot of WotC games. Most guys just run the fight. And if you watch a lot of old school games, most guys just run the fight. So to take care of that, so you wouldn't have every game just falling apart, WotC leans in a bit more, give you safety. 2nd edition does it a bit more, but you'd see the writing on the wall with most people playing even old school. They wouldn't run to the doorway. They run to the fight. They run without strategy. Because most people aren't war gamers. They're not military people. They're not thinking that way. It might take them a bit to learn that. They could, but they might lose a few characters. especially if they're going at action quite frequently. That's where you might have them making up multiple characters. Miles, it's not saying that you're completely off, but there's probably even a majority or a small minority within WotC that plays it a little bit wiser. And I've read the WotC material. I get that they actually they advise some of the stuff. They're not completely off, right? Well, that's it, Grim DM. I'm not saying that there's not, but it's all part of, you don't just run in to get the thrilling action of just fighting out in the open. But that's what a lot of people do, right? But you read the WotC material, I'll give it to them. I won't lie. I read the WotC stuff. They advise you to be careful, use strategy. Yeah, they do. But then you go watch a WotC game, and you're like, you watch a lot of them, and you start going, well, shit, there's no strategy there. They're just running in. Go watch a lot of old school gaming back in the old school era. I mean, just a lot of open games, especially the tournament play. If you the tournament play was I tried to get around it for a bit. One of the most devastating things I've ever seen, because tournament play was really players coming in and DMs that weren't really experienced DMs the way we were with tournament. They'd have players just running with their characters in the fights. I mean, just no strategy at all. Like, to the point the wizard is trying to swing his staff in close quarters. Like, oh, okay, it's not gonna last long. If my players are wise and solve combat puzzles, it'll be easier. But sometimes that's what you're hoping. That's the aim. You hope they learn from the books. We all know they always don't read all this stuff. So it just got to understand, there's a lot of careless people. It's sad to say, the vast majority of people are like that. The game, you can go from playing with certain guys, or you're lucky to play with certain guys. You get it to the vast majority, it's like walking into hell. It is like walking into absolute hell. But you hope they learn. I don't know. I'm up and down the one shot thing, right? I only do one. I never did one shots for years, but recently I've done some one shots only to get people a taste of my game. Not a big fan either, because one shots are railroads, and I prefer a sandbox. The tournament play, Grim, if you've seen that part, if you would have seen that, you probably would have said, oh shit, that's what you're talking about. Yes, dude. That's what I was trying to explain to you. That's the majority. It would fuck your head to watch them play. Because they'd make the mistakes and then make the mistakes again. You'd be like, what? Well, you're playing a wizard. It really depends on how you use it too. A lot of guys would say the common magic missile spell. Here's my advice. Here's how I play a wizard. I would do this. I would go for either something, if I had sleep as an option, I go for sleep. Magic missile usually, and daggers, not a staff. People would ask me, why would I do that with a first level wizard in old school? Well, first off, the magic missile is auto hit, so you do some damage. You're going to help the other combative characters in. But a dagger, you can do a cold shot. And so I could do damage and help out the fighters. And I could have a few daggers instead of just one. But I could do things like throw it, stab the guy in the shirt, and like stick him to a tree. Right? So like just effective cold shots could help. But they're all lucky. You got to roll like a 20 to hit. But taking the chance doesn't hurt if you're going to miss most of the time anyway. I never ran a module myself, Bill, and welcome to the thing. I've never ran a module myself. Had a goblin with a giant ballista that would just destroy a character shooting at the party and goblin minions. Well, here's what's funny. I'll give you guys a story. I watched a level 2 group on OpenRPG. They were level 2. One was level 3. And I didn't mean to. Wasn't planning. Hobgoblins. They ran to hobgoblins. They're going to have an encounter with them. Openly. Yes, these are the guys that move a wizard up to close quarters. Should have had the wizard running back right away. The cleric hid under a fucking wagon. A cleric is someone who can actually should have been up with the fighters instead of the fucking mage trying to swing his staff. Very typical majority situation. But what fucked them really was this. There was only a few hobgoblins. One has a bow. One starts shooting from back. And even though they take out a few of the hobgoblins, the one shooting ends up just killing the whole group. Like they slaughter the whole group. Just one guy shooting in the back. It's the funniest fucking thing, but it just tells you how careless. The wizard went down right away. The thief is off in the woods, and he doesn't even rush towards doing. He doesn't use his range. Anything. He's going like, I'm coming up to see what's going on. Like you can see, what do you want to do? He's like, I'm going to move closer. Okay, no range, no bow, no shooting at the fucking hobgoblin with the bow. Complete breakdown, but that's the majority for you right there. All right, reading what's here. Players had to figure out how to reach the ballista, and if they brute forced it, someone would get tagged, and the wizard got down instantly. This is what happened with them with just a bow. You're talking about a ballista. This guy just had a bow. Sort of similar story miles, ironically. Grim DM, is anyone not choosing magic missile? or sleep? I mean, it's either sleep or magic missile. I prefer magic missile just to get the auto damage done. That's safer. And then instead of doing a staff, I go to daggers right away because I'm not going to have a magic staff. So I'm not going to get in close quarters with a staff. So I'm not going to play that game. I'm going to go to daggers right away or darts. Darts was another option. Sometimes I take darts, and I look to get poison as early as I could in the game to coat darts with if I could. But that wasn't going to be instant. So if you got into some action early on, forced into it by accident, I just go to either just throw the daggers, at least I got range, or start doing call shots. A pacifist wizard. A lot of people play those. Smart players play those. Cast your spell, get the fuck back. You're not meant to be fighting. Just take your staff and fuck off behind the thing, right? Agree, Grim DM. There's a lot more options. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. If you're a wise player and your DM is open to allowing extra stuff in, yeah, outside of the core, right? Of course, there was options, but I mean, just on the typical core. When I first experienced second edition with a DM just doing core, I just went the daggers. You want to know what really led me to using it was actually having darts, not daggers, the first time. Ironically, I did a call shot, and this guy was about to like charge in on a almost dead warrior, and I'm like, okay, I do a call shot with the dart, but the call shot is I want to fucking rip through his fucking clothing and stick him into the tree, so he has to like try to fucking pull that off, try to get himself off the fucking dart. It worked. I rolled a 20. Stuck him to the tree. It gave the cleric time to heal the fucking warrior. Warrior finally gets in position and cuts the guy down. And by keeping him out of the fight, they were able to deal with just the two that were like right in front of them, right? Because there's another ranger there. So instead of having the third one run in, and right away when I did that, I was like, okay, I'm doing that from now on. Like every fucking time, right? Every time. Like darts or daggers or something in the range bit there. Another thing I was going to mention is I like using tropes in a more deceitful way, like little small tropes. Like I never had an issue. A lot of people complain starting at the start of the game. I'm like, why? I'd start you off somewhere like, oh, there's a personal home. You guys can rent rooms here at this place. They have like a kitchen area where you can come down. I would just have like, it'd be like the trope. It's an inn, but it's a home. So mentality is no longer trope. I like to use tropes like an illusion, right? As DM, I enforce earning spells and components have gotten much extra adventuring just because of the pursuit. Oh, of course. Of course. But again, that part of the game, if you talk to, see, here's the difference, Grim. Me and you would play a campaign that could have 100 sessions. Imagine playing a campaign that has 10 or 6. Like, and you're only going to give that much time to the game overall. This is what WotC and the action-based gaming This is what it develops. You even see it early in the old school where instead of doing like 50 to 100 sessions, they're doing like 10 or 20. And they're doing a lot of one shots and they're doing a lot of module short round play. So we're like, I do open gaming. I never did modules either, but I do like 50 to 100 sessions, could be more, where you have a long time to dig into the game, go around getting your components and having that be interesting, making you go places, all the stuff we're talking about. In long-term gaming, that works. It gives you reasons to get out and do stuff, look for stuff. It's easy to line that up with what the other characters want to do as well as you're pursuing this stuff. It gives you reasons to go somewhere, ask questions, meet with NPCs, go find something. In a way, a lot of this stuff can start just developing small adventures on their own without the DM having to do much. Like, it's just going to develop what the characters want to do, say in a sandbox, right? They want to go and pursue things, get things, blah, blah, blah. Little pressures, good little pressures. Old wargaming mindset, right? Imagine when you get to a game where you're going to get like 10 sessions. That's completely different. Now your mindset for how long you have to do something completely changes. Now you have to not really get exactly in a railroad, but you're playing a shorter game. You're not going to play a game where it's just slow, sort of long paced, go look for components, do this, have the interesting thing happen. Now it's 10 or 20 sessions, right? That's old school starting to develop towards what you see WotC doing now, right? Because again, that's the majority not wanting to play in campaigns that are 100 sessions long. That's just the truth. This is the problem. Like Miles sort of hinted at it earlier. It'd be boring. My players would find it boring to have to go around and skip a lot of the action. Yep. Yeah, I get it. That's part of the old grind. Yeah, it doesn't, and like Philo said, you can do action, but it's all strategy. And if it doesn't work out for you, though, you run, or you avoid, right? When you don't have the thing to take down the fucking leader or do the thing that's going to work out for you, you avoid because you are fragile. And you're meant to avoid. You only do it trickery, but it's avoid a lot of action. That's usually what you're doing right there. It's so easy to die. And then you're playing long campaigns. Like I would play in a campaign that's like 100 sessions, 150 sessions. So you have all the time in the world to go out, get your component, and that sort of plays to the long campaign. These things are meant to exist, so you have something to do. And it's the game at the early stages is assuming you're playing these longer campaigns. So there is the reason to go get your components, get into a slower process. But imagine if you're now going to the majority, even in the old school, that are going like, yeah, we're not going to be coming back after like 15 or 20. Well, okay, that changes the pace of what you're doing. Now you don't got 100 sessions to slow roll these things. Right. And you have people that just are not going to commit as much. And here's what happened. It was made for war gamers, and some of us adjusted to the war gamer mindset. This is what the hobbyists do. Even guys that weren't originally war gamers, you adjust to the war gamer mindset. Most people coming into the hobby were not war gamers. Like they need, I don't know, maybe they need more stimulation. They just do not commit to longer campaigns. Spell components, I like. Well, Grim, you already heard him. He likes them. I like them too. Under the circumstance that I like the control factor. It doesn't let you just blow spells off. It's going to limit you. Yeah, Grim is. I'm in the same mindset as him. Slower but it's the reason is it plays into the longer factor of 50 to 100 sessions. We got time. We want things to do, and it limits how much you can use your spells. Right there, it's good limitations, old school mindset limitations. Encumbrance. most WotC guys now, I see them all the time. The DMs, they just give their players holding bags. Like magical holding bags is common in a lot of WotC games I see, where they can hold a few thousand. Bill, I don't use exactly encumbrance. I use common sense, but it's the same. Understand it's the same thing. It's just a little loose, and that's not majority thing. That's still old school. It's just I don't count every bit of weight. I'm not that anal. That's wargaming accuracy. I still like. I still go with the idea like I'm still going to use common sense, right? So you might be a few more pounds above what the exact rule would be, but it wouldn't be new school ridiculous shit, right? It wouldn't be like a fucking item list where you're just like, what the hell the fuck you carry that stuff? Yeah. I bet you Grim DM probably agrees with me, which is more just common sense. Yeah, Philo's common sense. Like, I'm not going to let you be ridiculous, but it's common sense. If I just don't think like, yeah, you can't carry that much, dude. That's not happening. My just common sense tells me that's not happening. And most of the war gamers would actually be okay with that. They'd adjust. A lot of guys saw it, but there are some war gamers out there that did cross over that actually liked it. It was always a way to limit use. And there's a reason, Miles. I'll give you a reason. How do you do it without making magic? Like, here's their mindset. So I'll give it to you. Why would they make it for some spells, especially where you think, oh, you could use that? It's so magic mentally. It's a mental thing more than it is you're concerned about the use of it. It's a mental thing of how do we make sure that magic feels more, I guess, in the realistic zone and not like a play toy. The limitation is to make it feel more rare in use, make you go get the thing. And so by the time you get the thing and you can finally use it, it is a mental thing. It's a mental thing for some. Now, for some, it is just a limitation, so you don't blow up with it. But how do you make sure people aren't always using magic like a toy? Oh, I totally get you, Miles. And there's nothing wrong with understanding the difference. It's not saying one's better than the other, but just trying to tell you why they did that. The idea is to make sure magic still feels rare and not abused like a toy, right? So it doesn't. So you don't. The idea is to make sure it's not undervalued. Well, that's what me and Philo were talking about pretty much. Grim. Like it's most guys were like us. You don't let it get ridiculous, but you use common sense. You don't go to the exact. Oh, but I there's limitations in there, but I still feel just from what I've seen. I remember I talked to WotC people. I ran the WotC 5e game. Because I have experienced both, I would say it does feel more play toy tool. And I've done the side games too, where games that are tighter with Magic than D&D. So like playing like the Middle Earth game I just covered, that is way tighter, say on Magic. And is there value in the extreme limitations to make it feel super rare? It does work. The rarity does work. It does make it feel like, okay, that's rare when you could just when you could finally do the thing, right? The way I took WotC in, it feels more like a video game to me. It's a feel difference. And when you've done both, that's where I say it feels more like a video game to me and the aspect of magic casting with wizards than say old school. Like there's principles, and I get what you're saying, Miles. There are principles to put some limitations there. It's just I find it to not be enough, at least to get away from a certain feel. Maybe it's just because I'm used to the limitations and the rarity more than say in WotC, but it does feel a bit gamey, like too gamey, instead of an experience overall, like a little bit too gamey to me. There are also other side of spellcasting. Can characters speak? Can they have use of their hands? Yep. Oh yeah, exactly. You could be muted. You could be shut up. All kinds of things. So if you had to do gestures or speak certain words to cast, if you can't do that, well, there goes your casting right, right out the door. Right. That could affect you. Uh, one thing is I don't do is a host rule thing. So this is one thing some old school guys have cursed me out for it, but I don't do it. It takes 2 rounds to cast that spell. No, I don't do that. I that's one thing I personally host ruled out. You can cast a spell when you, as long as you got the means, you can do the verbal, you can do the gesture, and you can use the component. I'll just let you cast, or even if you don't need a component, just let you cast. I just let you cast. I don't. This takes 2 rounds. Not doing that to you. You just cast. So that's one area where I break a little bit towards the ease. I know it's not like super fucking, but I mean I know some old school guys that were, especially early years when I started doing that at first, they were like, "That should take 2 rounds of cast." No, I let them do it right away. I'm like, it just doesn't break the game for me, so I don't. It's the one area where I ease up on the casting, right? Some old guys though, they're still in the. It takes 2 rounds. You wait 2 rounds. Nah, it hasn't blown up the game for me, so I don't care. It hasn't made the fighting less deadly. It hasn't made the wizard so fucking overwhelmingly fucking powerful, or it doesn't make it too gamey. So it doesn't feel that way. And that's important. Old school is really that feel sometimes more than anything. See, Miles, here's the reason they put some things in that might not make sense to you, because you think, oh, it's cool using magic here. It's not just that you're playing a game. They really value the feel of the experience. It could be minor things where you're just like, on game purpose, I don't see why they would limit you there. You're probably not completely wrong on some things when I've heard these criticisms over the years, but I get right away that it does help with an experience in the feel. Like it's real. They're not completely off, right? So if you actually do play to sort of weird limitations that you might not agree with, you do have an experience that you can't deny. That, and they'll know this. They know it. Like it's one thing to have the opinion from the outside, but if I put you in the game where you have to go through that, the actual in-game experience that you have, as long as you're bought in, you'll get why they do it. It is a feel and experience that's important. And they understand that the experience and the feel can be important to your success too. It's one thing to have easier success. It's one thing to have grindy success, and that success through grind can just feel better. I hand wave casting time for simple spells, but some things quite fantastical that almost ritual fits. Yeah, I wasn't the only one who did it, and so you get with some spells, you do sort of something similar. I sort of do it all over, but I get what you're saying. Will you be going to? No, I'm in Nova Scotia, Canada, and we have HalCon. And I rarely go to HalCon, to be honest with you guys. Really, it's something where some players got me to go a few times, and I went and ran there. And I do so much gaming in person that I don't like the idea of going to the con to game in person isn't as necessary for me as it is for some people. Just saying. The party must protect the wizard in order to give him to bring somebody back from did his very depth magic. Yeah. Yep. You're still vulnerable. You're still out there. I get what you're saying though, and that's where some of the guys would even curse me out. Well, what about this spell? Yeah, I know, but it still doesn't break the game for me. So it's one area where I'm just. Just saying, broke on that one. Broke on that one, dude. Broke on that one. But yeah, Miles, I get why new guys don't understand some things. There was an aspect of feel in that to the game that was very important to the old guys. And I would just my only defense in things that might not make sense to you is it's one thing to look at it from the outside. I get the criticism. It's another thing to be in it and then go through a certain grind that they're going to put you through. And then there's an experience, a success through that grind. And they won't be wrong. The success will feel better. And you go, oh, so not just gamey play is important. The feel and experience can be so important, like it, because it's manipulation. Minor things manipulate you in a certain way. You don't even know this. It's just minor manipulation, but it feels good to go through it. It can feel hard too to have to go through certain minor grinds that you again might seem like something. Oh, why would they bother doing that? From the outside looking in, I get it. It's only once you're doing it and you're in that you go, and they add up. It's not just that grind, but it's a grind over here, little grind over here, little grind over here. They add up. You go through it, and it feels great. And that's, I totally get it. That's majority. And sometimes it's not even your fault too. That can just be developed because you haven't played that way. That's true. And there's only a minority of people that really like that. That's guys like me I've had to accept that realistically hobbyists like myself, maybe even like Grim or Philo, we can't hold a market up. We can't even hold a business up properly. I almost say I look back at the old school like we were lucky because it was an experiment. And even though we're really not the type of group to keep a business up, we had a business serve us. We had people make games for us. I look at the old school like it's almost a miracle that it exists the way it does. And so I don't get mad at the new school stuff. And I don't expect people to keep catering to the old school, like the hobbyists like myself. Like Grim said earlier, I'm just happy I got my game. That's what Grim said earlier. Regardless of the new stuff, he's happy he has his stuff. I'm happy the same way he is. Like, I'm just glad second edition exists. I'm just glad at all the side games that exist to go with it, right? I'm just happy they exist because the chance that we'll ever be served again, because we're such a small part of the overall customer base, we're lucky. Even some of the OSR stuff, some of that is not made too well. It is made towards the action and stuff, so some of that does make me frown because I'll read it and I'll be like, oh, that's an old school guy who doesn't understand the survival stuff or doesn't understand any of the stuff we talked about tonight. Some of those games can be a little off for that reason. But at least there is the OSR, and there's a minor bit of serving us, but it's individuals that make enough money off us to maybe pay the rent. I'm glad that individuals can make some games for us and pay the rent. But I got to say this after talking to some OSR designers. They make the games like somehow they can become wealthy off it. I'm like, well, you might make some good money on a run or two, but it's going to run dry really quick, dude. Like, there's just not enough of us to keep you up. Like, it's the reason TSR really, like, no matter what TSR did at the end of the day, just it never opened up to the wider audience right away. A bunch of the wider guys ended up going to different games that just didn't cater to them now. A lot of guys just left the hobby completely. A lot of people went to different games. There were some like adjustments like to Palladium, World of Darkness. So there was a lot of experimenting, grabbing them. And the reason those games could grab people is because so many were leaving D&D, and these were the wider majority. The tournament play failed for them because the tournament play still had a lot of the tighter stuff that you don't like. But this is why we could guys like me or Grim or Philo could look at guys maxing out hit points and get mad at them. But I was like, I sympathize with the old school GMs that were doing that. They were running into tons of people that just didn't play the way we played. Oh, talking about me. What's my favorite monster in the game? Such a out there question. I'm going to try to give you an honest answer here, to give you something close to what is one of my favorites. Gelatinous cube. A dungeon monster, go figure. That's at low level anyway. I would say that between that and I like humanoid monsters. I like kobolds. I like kobolds a lot. Not the kobolds from WotC, the dog face people. Not the dragonkin. I even like looking at them like that. That's WotC view. And that's even late second edition, so I don't blame people for getting there. I still like the not really connecting them that way to that stuff. I like just the dog face kobolds the way I remember them from old school. Gelatinous cube in them. As far as low level, you go up higher levels, it depends. I like a lot of monsters, to be honest with you, Bill. Just to be straight with you. I love goblins for certain reasons, but I like kobolds too. Big and kobolds. And gelatinous cube. Gelatinous cube is because it just catches so many new people. Even if you're one of the hobbyists like us. If you're new, that shit will still teach you a lesson. It's the one kind of monster that even the smarter players can run into. Miles likes the flesh golem. Grim and Dieb, Philo, you guys have a monster you like, you can dive in. When I think monsters, I don't think of other games. It's hard to think monsters and think of other games because they had all other games had a different approach to monsters and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah, I would say if you're thinking monster, I know you're asking about D&D. So I know it sounds simple with the gelatinous cube and the kobolds, but just for reasons, experience. It's always the one that catches new players. Gelatinous cubes catching them all the time in dungeons. And kobolds, just because I like trappy enemies. I like using the little traps with them. They can make them fast. It's good. Rust Monster it's not my favorite, but it's the one that I've seen make players shit themselves in old school. Not shit themselves really, but I mean just like because it's not even that it's going to kill them. Old school is items that are so valuable to you that it really, really does fuck with your head when you meet a Rust Monster, and especially if you're experienced. You're experienced, and I'm like, I describe a Rust Monster to you. You're just like, okay, yeah, no strategy. We're getting the fuck away from this thing right now. Yep. I've seen Minotaurs rip so many fucking people apart, though. They are always underestimated at the wrong times for the wrong players. We'll try to fight those Minotaurs. I'm like, all right. Let's see how that goes for you. Well, Philo's being a smartass. But I actually agree with him. I like the Cookie Monster. Cookie Monster makes me fucking laugh my ass off. For real, though. For real. So on the simple, there you go. No dragons mentioned, no nothing. All simple like flesh golem, kobolds, gelatinous cube, minotaurs, the fucking Cookie Monster. Nobody mentioned Cthulhu because he's partly goddish. So all the monsters you think you're going to hear, you're not going to hear most of the time. You're going to hear what people experience more than anything. That's why I like a person like kobolds because they're fun. They're fun. And you can fuck around and catch some higher level characters off guard with those kinds of monsters in ways they don't expect, because it's one thing to think they're weak. It's another thing for them to trap you and then beat the life out of you at higher levels. Did we just die? We're like level 6. Did we just die to kobolds? Yes, you did. The fuck? Well, right now, my uncle has some weed cookies. Yeah, I heard there's a lot of people are bitching about it, though. At least that's what I hear, Grim. I don't know enough about this to even have a fucking opinion, to be honest with you, but I heard the same thing. They're coming out with a 5th edition. Let me go over with you guys. It's not the end of the stream. Give you a little rundown. So this Thursday, tomorrow I'm going out for my birthday thing. This Thursday, guys, space opera, sci-fi, late 70s game, a simulationist game like normal. It's about exploring vast galaxies with alien species, star empires, trade, espionage, combat, It's not as held back on the combat. That's why I'm looking forward to covering this one as well. You could be a pilot, soldier, merchant, scientist. It is known for crunch and realism, which a lot of the old school games are. Crunch, though, a lot of crunch here. It's not easy. Uh, as one note I made is it's trying to model a functioning interstellar society that might actually work, right? Rather than going like fast cinematic action, right? That's coming up Thursday. Saturday is a really interesting game that a lot of old school guys just haven't touched. Bushido. Bushido is a role-playing game set in a fantasy version of feudal Japan, focused on honor, duty, and social structure as much as combat. And this is, again, a lot of the old games were leaned away from combat. This is a game that leans more into it. Players take on roles like samurai, monks, or ninja, navigating a rigid class system where behavior and reputation matter, as we know, like in chivalry and sorcery. Reputation matter just as much as skill with a sword. The game emphasizes role-playing with cultural expectations, with consequences for dishonorable actions baked directly into the mechanics. And then on my birthday, for just people that don't know the game, I'll give the pitch I wrote up for this one. For my birthday, May 3rd on Sunday, is Shadowrun. Shadowrun is a cyberpunk fantasy RPG where a dystopian future of mega corporations and street-level survival collides with magic, elves, dragons, and spirits. Players are Shadowrunners, criminals for hire who take on dangerous jobs like hacking, infiltration, and sabotage while balancing high-tech gear with supernatural abilities. The setting is defined by a mix of gritty cyberpunk themes and classic fantasy elements existing side by side in a corporate-controlled world. Now, here's an interesting thing. Cool. Thank you very much, there, Bill. Here's an interesting... Pack texts are truly a nightmare. They are, Miles. Here's an interesting thing. I covered Earth Dawn. If any of you guys ever want to go check out that, if you haven't already. Here's a connection that most people don't know about. Earth Dawn is ancient, is sort of an ancient version of the Shadowrun world. It's connected. It's made by the same people, pretty much, but there is a connection between Earth Dawn and Shadowrun. Right. I talk about it a bit in the stream with Earth Dawn. If you don't know about Earth Dawn, that's an interesting game to check out. There's a comment section there where a guy, Max, a buddy of mine now, writes up a fucking great comment. He has a great comment because he doesn't have time to do a video review, but he wanted to really put his thoughts out there. So if you ever get a chance to go back and check out my Earth Dawn thing, check out the section with the comment. He has a lot to say. I would check it out after the stream because it lines, he's taking in what I said and then putting his own stuff out there. But Earth Dawn does connect to Shadowrun. I appreciate that, Phil. I really do. I'm glad you're entertained. I hope you're around for more, dude, because we're going to be doing, like I said, the space opera. Bushido is going to be fun. And Shadowrun's just very popular. I wanted to do something that I know I like. I know I'm going to get hyped about and do that for my birthday, right? And on the Shadowrun night, like I warned you guys, I'm probably going to have a couple of drinks of rum. I won't get so drunk I can't do the overview, but usually I don't have a drink when I'm doing these things. Newtonian physics. Yeah, the Cobalt pack tactics, there's similar sort of ways in the old school too. Cobalts are fucking great. They're just fucking great. They're a great enemy. And they surprise... To me, I like them. And you could do this similar with the goblins, but I like doing it more with the kobolds sometimes, is you can shock higher level groups at making kobolds a challenge for them. Like a legit challenge where it would surprise some people like, holy fuck, we're level 8 and these things could kill us? Yep. Bushido has you covered. I hope you're here for that, Philo. Bushido is the real gimmick. They understood that a lot of guys wanted to do stuff like what you're talking about was a samurai setting. I will, Miles, for sure. Hope tonight was fun. I'm not done yet, but probably going to have one of these and we're going to call it. All right. I just got to make sure I get a good sleep tonight because I'm going to be going up for I got things to do tomorrow, and then I got to go up for the birthday. But tonight was a lot of fun. Yeah, just going into stuff. It was just random talk. It's all about being tonight. The off script thing is all about you guys sitting here and shooting the shit with my people, right? The other nights are my game reviews. You know how that goes. I have 2 days open where I'm probably going to surprise some people and cover 3rd edition because I've done some private gaming with 3rd edition. So I'm probably going to cover 3rd edition this month, 3rd edition D&D, a WotC edition. So Mr. Miles, you might appreciate that. That's WotC D&D. I'm going to cover that 3rd edition. And then we'll see what the other surprise is. The other thing I got to say to you guys, because how YouTube is doing this, the war game coverage, I might be adjusting, covering the war game stuff and doing it later because there's dips in viewership at certain times. And I want to wait till viewership is better at peak because there are certain times almost every year where viewership gets dried out. I just didn't know the timing of this because I'm sort of new to hitting some of these marks, but doing the stuff I'm doing. So I might be adjusting some of those and just replacing them with other old school games I already have things done for. I'll make an announcement probably sometime Thursday, like just tell you guys what the war games are going to be put on hold and what other games I'm going to cover. Yes, I have to do some adjusting on that though, because that is a killer for me. I put them up and it dies on the vine. What I'm thinking of doing is I get a backup channel. So here's some good news for the Wargamer guys. For videos, not for streams, because I'm not doing probably streams on them right away. But I do have a Warhammer video that I'm going to put up. But I might start doing it just on my backup channel and just doing just war games on that channel. So Miles, I'll link, once I start that, I'm going to make a playlist for it. I'll link you the playlist, and when I'm posting those videos, that's where you can watch the wargaming stuff. The algorithm does fuck with me. It doesn't treat war games like tabletop role-playing games. And it does screw up the viewership. Sadly, this is not my fault, dude. It's not. I can't control how YouTube functions. The algorithm screws around with all my videos once I start going off topic that way. It just does. I don't totally understand it. It just does. But I can get away with it by just doing the wargaming videos on the backup channel. So it doesn't mean I'm cutting them off to appease you. I'm going to be doing them, and I want to do them. But I'm going to start doing them on the backup channel and then make a playlist, because that channel, I can do that, make videos you want to see with the Warhammer stuff, and then have it not just hurt this channel. It seems like I feel like I'm stuck until viewership goes up on tabletop role-playing games, just on this channel alone, right? Just to sort of keep steady, because there's a dip in viewership. Everyone experiences it every year. And when viewership goes down, it sort of stays down. Old school is, I got to be honest with you guys, we are losing people every year. So there's these dips that are normal, but sometimes coming out of them, we drop out because guys are passing away. Guys are going to the point of getting into a walker and not watching videos much anymore. It's just being real. And so we do degrade where we're very old in the old school of some of our audience, right? And that's not to be cruel. It's just to be real. But Miles, I will be posting Warhammer videos. So what I'm going to do is just post the playlist on the comment section. So I'll be sharing the playlist and updating in the comment section on the main channel. So where I leave my comments, you'll still be seeing the link for that, links for videos coming up. It's just I won't be directly uploading them to this channel. And that way, at least I can still do them for you, right? We can still shoot and I don't mind doing streams. Some nights where we're doing these off-script streams, I don't care if we talk about some more gaming stuff. That's cool. I don't mind this type of talk, like this type of freedom, right? That's cool. Police force. The suspects had to be taken alive and include some Myoko folklore for flavor. See, what you like about Bushido is a little bit more lenient on the action stuff. So it's one of the rare old games where they lean to the old school, but they're a little nicer with expecting action right away. So it actually, look, combat still as diddly as ever, like it would be in old school, but there is an acknowledgement. Ironically, so is space opera a bit. Ironically, leans a little bit more into action. So for all the other games that are really like, oh, avoid, 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 or at least be smart, but it's resource draining. Those two games are a little nicer on the action, strangely, for old games where most of them aren't. Most of them aren't. Palladium, I might see. I'm considering doing this, guys. I because it's so popular. I have another empty slot to fill, and I have played it, so I feel like I can actually do the overview on it, which is because it's just so popular, and there's so many things to it too. Robotech, in the general sense for Palladium. So I'm thinking of doing. I'm actually not just thinking of doing. I actually want to do that one. I have you guys here now. Does Robotech sound like an interesting game to you guys for me to cover? It'd be nice to know if you'd be cool, like if you'd be interested, if you guys be interested in hearing the overview on Robotech. It's a popular game. A lot of guys haven't played it, and so many guys in the old school did. I'd love to get people fucking playing Robotech Palladium. Palladium has some issues though. I love the gameplay. I think the gameplay is better for Heroes Unlimited, which I already covered. But I do like Robotech. I like the ideas of Robotech, and I like how they covered the entire thing. They did Robotech so well that if you did another Robotech game, you sort of couldn't get away without going to their stuff. Treatment the Traveler. Yes, it did. I think that's also leans into the expectation of action there, Craig. That the medical stuff you're talking about. Cool. Well, I do. If you guys aren't frowning at that, I'd like to cover because I'm not going to cover 50 Palladium games because there's so many out there, and they're all up and down for what people like or don't like. But one of the more popular ones, which I have real experience with, is Robotech, and it's not perfect, but in a way, it covers a lot of things that are generally found in a lot of the different Robotech games. So I feel like if you want to know, or not Robotech games, Palladium games. So if you want to know a bit more about Palladium than say Heroes Unlimited, Heroes Unlimited is sort of what I call, for all the criticism I hear about Palladium, Heroes Unlimited is good, but it's really early. It's one of the only systems where I see the upgrading, the add-ons hurt it. Where in a way, if you go back to the earlier version of Palladium, I actually think the system works really well. Right? Really well with Heroes Unlimited, especially works actually really well. So when I hear criticism mode, it's usually for later games with the add-ons. But to me, it's one of the games where the farther back you go, ironically, the better the system works. Like you would think improvement, but in my opinion, going back to the earlier version of it, and especially the one you find with Heroes Unlimited, it works better. It works better before it starts adding on the bigger damage and all that, right? But Robotech is just a popular one. And it's one that I actually owe to because I haven't played every Palladium game, but that's one I did. Yeah, I love fucking Robotech. It's fucking awesome. I really do love Robotech. I love the fucking ideas behind the whole thing. I love everything with Robotech. But that's one of the fillers. Now, replacing the war games, I got some other games to consider to replace those, right? But I got enough games to last me to the end of the year. Yeah. And the idea is really, third edition will be the exception. I am going to do third edition D&D, but that's only so I can sort of touch on. It's going to be the only early 2000 game I do, because most of my games are my range for games is from 1970 to the year 2000. Now, I know there's nothing in 1970, but that's just my range of games. The exception is going to be third edition. I was going to do fourth edition, but I want to hold it off now till next year, right? So, and the reason I was considering doing fourth edition is because it's considered such a separate game. Like fourth edition is in a weird place in WotC, because ironically, a lot of old school guys like fourth edition. Like they don't like third, they don't like fifth, but they oddly like fourth. And I'm still doing my research and trying to and I'm playing a bit of it now privately to try to understand why does that game appeal to the old crowd in a way third and 5e doesn't. Like, what the fuck makes this game so different? And I feel like I'm learning it, but I'm going to hold off doing the overview on that until next year. So I do want to do just one WotC game. So the idea is to have a look at the difference, especially difference with D&D in the WotC era. And I had a good talk. A guy, if you ever want to hear a little bit more about third edition on my channel, I did an interview with DM Craig, and he said a fair bit about third edition. He liked it. And he said I don't agree with everything he said, but I'm going to do fair treatment, fact treatment on the third edition thing. But that's more for curiosity for us. Thought people would appreciate that. Third edition, no, it's old enough to not be considered something new WotC, right? And it is where WotC was still just slowly coming off the TSR era. And a lot of guys from TSR worked on it. A lot of guys, ironically, second edition, a lot of this black book stuff that I wasn't a fan of made its way over to third edition. Like feats. People are like, feats came out in third edition. No, they didn't. Grim DM will definitely understand what I'm saying here. Feats start in the splat books in second edition AD&D. That's where you first really encounter feats. The concept of feats, anyway. Same thing with the tieflings. Tieflings, you might think are WotC invention. No, second edition, TSR. That's where and I did a video. There's a video if you guys ever want to go check it out on tieflings, where I think the view of second edition on tieflings is actually good. Actually, that version of tieflings makes me want to use them in the game. Like it's such a unique view compared to what you see in WotC that I'm like, even the WotC guys, like, hey, Miles, you're a 5.5 guy. If you haven't seen my video on tieflings, go check it out, because it's not hard. It's a mind. It's just a different way of looking at tieflings. They're different, but you could adapt that easily to your game. And I think it's actually better than WotC has. And it's something WotC guys, the reason I really wanted to do it was a video actually more for WotC guys like yourself, Miles, where it was like, if you do use tieflings, go check this out, because I actually think TSR has a better take on them. And you can still use all your stats in that, but just overall what they are and how they function, it's fucking brilliant. Makes them way more scary in a certain way, way more fucked up in the right way. It's interesting to check out. Yeah, pretty much. Kind of like most of second edition guys, like me and probably Grim. The core is the main three books. I didn't use much of the gameplay changes from any of the splat books. I think probably like you, Grim, I would assume what I'm going to say here is going to relate. Oh, well, then that's don't worry about it. But it was a video made for people that do use them. So it's like, here, if you guys think tieflings are good in WotC, come check this out. But I hear you. WotC tieflings, I think, are stupid. I thought second edition view of it was interesting. Anyway, there's more curiosity covering that. I use kits, not all, of course. Some of them are blow up, some of them are stupid. I use I like equipment from the Thieves book. You know what I mean? Some of the non-weapon proficiencies, stuff that doesn't affect the core game. I steal stuff from the side books. I just don't steal any core gameplay changes. I still play second edition from the three main books as far as core gameplay. But I have no shame borrowing some of the kits. I do like the kit idea because I found the kits was a way to give some direction to players. It's like, okay, I'm a fighter. Well, you can be a fighter with this. And I let guys make kits too. I just found it was a little bit it helped on direction for role-playing gameplay. Just felt with for some guys, not for all, right? Half demon is sick. I don't know how they made it. Blarg. I see. Here's the difference. I would make it player optional. See, when I say I was interested in the tiefling, go check out the video because my pitch is to use them as NPCs like drow. Right. So on the side of tieflings, it's not really it's you could as a WotC person, but I'm like, it's like I don't like the idea of people playing drow. I don't allow people to play drow. I think that's stupid. But drow as NPCs in the world to fuck around with, that's a completely different view on drow, right? What I'm saying is I take a view at tieflings as NPCs. They're just interesting to use as another dynamic that way, right? That's 100% Grim the way I felt. That was it was a way to not just be your typical fighter. In a way, I look at like Ranger and Paladin like sort of like kitsing themselves to the fighter class, right? With a lot of gimmicks, but a little less gimmicks. But it gives you some. I just found exactly what you're saying. It gives some direction to the players. Oh yeah, Blade Slinger, no, and I didn't do Drow either. Everyone wanted to be Drist. Yeah, you're right. All right, in direct normal game, no, but I've done these weird side games. I think you'd find interesting and funny, Miles. I would do what I call goblin campaigns. They'd be short runs. They wouldn't be the long ones. But I'd let everyone play goblins. But understand, you're not playing the goblins from WotC. You've been playing the monster goblins, and usually it would be like you're thrown out of your goblin tribe, and you'd almost have nothing, and the group would have to play. And these were side fun games. I only did a few times, but they were so fun because it was just how would you get by in a world where the humans don't want you, other goblins don't want you, and here you are thrown into the fucking wilderness with nothing. Like with nothing, right? And you got to decide how you're going to play these little monsters. And no, I mean, you could make that a thing, but no, I never allowed people to. Goblins were monsters. Drow are monsters. Like I treat them like monsters. I always the idea of I'd hear people wanting to like outside of that fun thing, and that was fun. I won't lie to you. Like having people that play these little goblin runs, that was for fun. That was for fun. It was curious fun, and it was interesting to see how people would deal with that. But no, when I have people come around like, could I play the monster? No, dude, goblins are monsters, dude. That they belong in the monster manual. Have you done final game to get background for first edition players for a campaign? No. Kits, like me and Grim just talked about. I like the idea of adding kits. Did I do what you would call session 0 gameplay? No, I never did. I don't know. Session 0 means so much to so many different people. I would get together with the players making their characters, and we could talk about how they met up, and it was more conversational before we started the game overall. But I never did play at level 0 or set up background that through. I never did that. I just honestly never did it. Heard other people. I have no problem with people doing it. Some people do session 0 where they play a bit. Never did that. Character creation, and then we have a talk about how the players might have met up with the characters, and it's all about through dialogue. So I guess session 0 to me is more like just getting together with the players and making the characters and figuring things out as a team. So it is an activity of purposely getting together to make the character. So I do count it as a session 0. I just never did anything to develop a background in that way. I gave one rule. You can have 1 page's background at most. Most people give me either like a few lines, a paragraph, or half a page. The really odd people would give me a full 1-side page, not 2 sides. 1-side page was your max. You can right to the bottom. But I warn players, I really do use your background shit. I'm not going to read 3 pages, but I do use your background shit. So don't make the mistake of having like, this assassin was after my family and he's probably after me. Okay, you put that in the background, dude. So guess what? That assassin is after you. So good luck. Hopefully he doesn't catch up to you on this one. All right, that's almost a good 3 hours. I hope you guys had a good time. I love y'all. It was a great conversation, a lot of fun. Remember the games this week: Space Opera, Bushido, and Shadowrun.